What did you find out about your husband only after you got married? Before we got married I loved how sarcastic she was. After we got married I realized she wasn't sarcastic at all, just mean. We're still happily married, though. He hates grocery shopping, like would rather clean the toilet than pick up more than 2 things at the grocery store. It kind of works though, because I hate cleaning the bathroom. I understand his side of this. People at grocery stores move incredibly slow. Next to getting off a full plane, it's the slowest I've ever seen people move. Frick, it's infuriating if self-checkout isn't working. 2 months after our wedding, just after we mailed all the thank you cards to our guests, she calmly suggested an idea about our honeymoon, which was another 2 months away. Let's go as friends. What she really meant was let's get divorced. She genuinely believes her life is meant to be a tragedy, a belief that I couldn't help her shake off. We did manage to go on the honeymoon as a couple, but we filed for divorce within half a year. I hope she's okay. I'm having a blasty blast. I wouldn't be inclined to believe that last line, but I can't imagine someone writing blasty blast and it not being true. My wife can speak French. We are on vacation last February in Papeete, Tahiti, French Polynesia. My wife starts talking French to everyone talking French. We've been married 25 years. There's no way that she didn't plan that. I'm gonna blow his freaking mind. That 3/4 of the time he spends in the bathroom is spent on iPad time. For years I thought he was struggling with digestive issues. Nope, just the Simpsons game. He thought the word subtle meant the opposite of what it means. All through dating and the first few years of marriage, 7 years, I just thought he was using it sarcastically. Also, he gets horizontal and vertical confused. As in, he falls down on the bed after a long day and says, it's so nice to finally be vertical. He has a nice butt, though, so it evens out. The butt will one day start to sag, but horizontal will never be vertical. Poor guy. That he has a third middle name. He gets a pass though, because he didn't know either. And his amazing pinnacle of love and devotion, his mother, also forgot, and when shown the birth certificate showing a third middle name, wondered aloud, now why did I do that? Haha, some kid I graduated high school with had around 5 middle names. Quite a mouthful when they announced his name. He's very much like a llama. Upset him at just the right time and he'll completely lose his appetite and refuse to eat for a while. Well, I learned something new about llamas today. I literally only discovered this the moment we were married, that he has a very romantic side. All the time we were together before, I probably would have said I would have liked a little more traditional romance, but I appreciated how straightforward and pragmatic he was about other things and thought I can't have it both ways. I could add that he is a theoretical physicist who works with engineers, and he has the personality to match. He always said he thought marriage was essentially meaningless. Eventually, for external reasons, we decided to do it. I proposed to him, by the way, with a new watch. We threw together a cheap little ceremony in a few weeks to get it over with, as we both put it. He put on his suit. I put on my pretty dress. We had the officiant there, that I found on Yelp 2 weeks before, and got started. However, when it came time for the vows and the ring exchange, I suddenly found myself facing a very sentimental man, who was clearly deeply in love with me and overjoyed to be marrying me. After that, the same man who took years to feel comfortable holding my hand in public for even 5 minutes was hugging and kissing me in front of everyone at every moment he could during the ceremony. Then he wanted to celebrate every week anniversary, then every month anniversary with romantic dinners and having the same cake we had at our wedding. He starts celebrating at 12:01 AM on our anniversaries. He gazes lovingly at his wedding ring and always wants me to do the Wonder Twins thing with him by clicking our rings together. Who'da thunk it? That Rice Krispie treats are his favorite baked good. He had never so much as mentioned them before to me. 2 years married and suddenly this bombshell, out of the blue. But seriously, after we got married I realized that he wasn't as calm as he seemed. He can actually get very anxious, like a normal human being. And if he doesn't do something active for a few days, work out, run, etc., he gets hyper like a 3-year-old on a sugar high manic. Can't sit still, loud singing. It's quite something to behold. I think your husband is actually a puppy. I just asked my wife this question and she told me it was the wart thing on the shaft of my penis. I wasn't aware that I had a wart thing on my penis, so I ran to the bathroom to check, only for her to arrive while I'm tugging away at the skin to laugh at me being so gullible. My wife and I are dying laughing at this. Hey, can you grab me something from the candy drawer if you're going to the kitchen? That's how I found out we had a candy drawer. After dating for 7 years and well establishing that I like to sleep in when I don't have plans, we got married. Suddenly, IDKY, apparently we had a bedtime and in the morning, it was suddenly time for us to get up. Had to have a stern conversation with my morning person husband about that real quick. If there's stuff we have to do, yeah sure, but if it's a lazy Sunday, leave me alone and go play video games alone. My wife turned out to be extremely food jealous. If I am eating something that looks and tastes better than what she is eating, she gets pretty upset if I don't offer her any. My wife insists on tasting my food drink if we get the same thing. Doesn't matter what it is, she's gotta make sure that I didn't get the better one. Love that lady. That he supported his buddy's family financially while his buddy spent a year in federal prison. Not England as everyone else was told. My husband kept his buddy's employment open by doing his buddy's job as well as his own job during that year. Awesome guy. Capital X. Not just after getting married, but after being together almost 18 years. One night we go to dinner at a friend's house. They're making pizzas, which we don't often do. My wife offers to help, grabs some dough, and starts spinning it on her fists like a freaking pro, tossing it high in the air with a confident flourish. I had no idea. I mean, I knew she did some time at a Little Caesars as a teenager, but I guess I assumed they just press the dough into pans there or some crap. I didn't ask, and she never brought it up. Turns out it's a damned attractive skill for a lady to have. Dying at the line did some time at Little Caesars. My wife can make balloon animals and I never knew it. One day we're sitting at home with the kids and after I brought home the wrong type of balloons, out of nowhere she twists up a dog, then a monkey. This is the kinda crap I wanted from this thread. My grandpa told my grandma he was Italian. They got married while she was pregnant and she had not met his family yet. When they did go to meet his parents, they were talking in Ojibwe, a Native American language, and she looked at him and said, "That's not Italian. What are they speaking?" And that's how my grandma found out she was married to an Indian, not an Italian. The shedding. My god, the shedding. I'd like to put a long sleeve shirt on without getting one of her hairs stuck between my fingers on the way through the sleeves. Man, I remember what that was like. She only laughs at her own jokes. Like, she'll laugh after I say something, but it's only because she is thinking something funnier in her head. She's her own best comic. I told my husband the other day that other people don't make me laugh that much, even TV shows or stand up, but dang, can I crack myself up? It feels narcissistic, but it's just the way I'm wired, I guess. Got it from my dad, a very serious dude. We'd be eating dinner and he'd start laughing out of nowhere and not be able to stop because of some dad joke he thought up in his head. He had never had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in his life, and I found this out when we were married for more than 5 years. I made him his first PB&J when he was 30, and he was blown away by how good it was. Whoa, just think of all the other things he hasn't had. I can't wait until you introduce him to potatoes. That he was married before. We've been married for over 10 years. I found out last week that the divorce from his first marriage was never filed, so my marriage to him is not valid. The first time I've ever seen someone else who had this happen to them. She somehow never mentioned the fact until much later. I figured when issuing marriage licenses that they check that crap, but apparently not. I found out my husband leaves everything open, so every drawer, door, cabinet, etc. that he opens will stay open. He also found out I'm even clumsier than he thought, and on my way to close one cabinet or drawer I will definitely hit my head on an open cabinet or trip over a drawer. Now he only leaves a few cabinets open at a time. Progress. The not closing the cabinets thing might be the death of my husband. I always joke it's like living with a poltergeist. I leave the kitchen and when I come back in every cabinet is open. When he lived with his dad, before we moved in together, He'd open the utensil drawer and just dump the container from the dishwasher in. That is never okay. He's literally never cleaned a thing in his life. No idea how to vacuum, clean a toilet or a shower. It was interesting. He's much better now. She had 2 other kids that she'd abandoned after my youngest, with her, was just over 1 year old. We didn't see her for almost 10 years. I have custody, for your information. My wife has very strong opinions on natural foods, added sugars, preservatives, and organic growing methods. After we got married, I noticed that several staples of my diet were slowly being phased out. The other shoe didn't fully drop until we had kids, at which point everything was evaluated for content before purchase, and many things were just barred from being brought into the house. This isn't a bad thing. I'm healthier than I have ever been in my life, but she didn't show any of the signs of being this crunchy before we got married. My wife is a sleep talker. I'll go along and speak to her for a while, and she never remembers anything. 2-3 times a week. Once, she was dreaming that a tornado was bearing down on the house and she was trying to round up pets and children. She was crying and calling out. So I got up and grabbed the corner of the mattress and started lifting and shaking the heck out of the bed, saying it's here, it's on us. She cried and screamed even harder, reaching around for the kids as she slowly came awake and realized what was going on. She threw a book at me and called me an butthole and went back to sleep. Can confirm, I'm butthole, but dang, it was funny. How shockingly alike we are. We're going on year number 5 together and year number 2.5 married. She and I think so much alike that it's scary. To the point where we say the same things at the same time in the same exact way on a daily basis. If I didn't know for a fact that she wasn't my Earth 11 or Rule 63 counterpart, then I'd be worried. How hardworking he is. When we were engaged, he was training in his field. He is naturally intelligent, so didn't study much and played a lot of games. Now that he's in his career, I've seen such a shift in his attitude and nature. I'd known that he'd struggled with anxiety and depression throughout his life, but about 5 months after the wedding it really hit hard. We'd just bought a car because he'd been doing well at his first full-time job. The stress of needing to work or else crashed down so hard that had to stop completely. The panic attacks were so severe and frequent that he nearly couldn't leave the house. He couldn't drive to work because he'd shake so violently and his arms and legs would go numb. Every morning around 4 AM he'd wake up to try to go to work and I'd stop him. We'd sit in the dark until he calmed down enough to play a video game for a while. These attacks would happen around 5 times a day. They've dissipated since he formally left the job and we decided that my income was technically enough. I had no idea that anxiety attacks could be that severe, and I wish I could take them away for him, at least so that he could get more out of life. Since we decided he won't work outside of home, we've started a family and he'll soon be a stay-at-home dad for our son. Instead of filling my husband with anxiety or terror, I've never seen him so excited and confident in himself. My sister found out 3 years into her relationship that her husband used to be an NFL wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers. She thought he just played beer league football casually with his friends. They were sitting around watching a football game on TV and he knew really specific details about certain players. She was asked him how he knew all this and he said he was pretty good friends with him. The conversation kept going and he finally admitted to playing in the NFL with him. His family would never talk about it either. She would be over at his house and his sister told her that his college games were pretty fun to go to. She never brought up that he was the star wide receiver playing in front of 70,000 people. I managed a restaurant where one of my line cooks was a former NFL wide receiver. He got hurt early in his career and was forced to quit playing. He didn't like to talk about his time in the NFL though, so most people didn't know. My wife and I discovered horrifying things about each other because after we married we shared one car. I will drink a coffee that has been out all day. It's normal for me to put a giant jug of iced coffee in the car and then sip from it intermittently for many hours. My wife, it turns out, often feels congested. She'll discreetly hock a gigantic loogie into any discarded coffee cup nearby. I would drive the car in the morning, then we'd switch midday and she'd take it for the afternoon. Then I'd take it back in the evening. Twice I picked up my neglected coffee and took a long draw. The straw was blocked, needed lots of suction, and then something icy and slimy slithered into my mouth. We have 2 cars now and I keep them both stocked with tissues at hand. Oh my gosh, this made me gag. Ugh. The last girlfriend before I got married, and a girl I thought I wanted to marry, when we started living together. None of this happened before that point. She began insisting she get all the pillows. Not all the pillows but one. Not enough pillows where n equals positive integer. All. At first, I'm like, okay, she likes a big thing of pillows. That's cool. I like a flat pillow. So I went down to the Bed Bath & Beyond and bought several pillows. She's nice. I like her. The sex is pretty excellent. So I'm cool. Here, darling, all the pillows you want. Oh, thank you. That night, she's trying to steal my one flat and kinda stinky pillow. I'm all, is there a different kind of pillow you like? I'm cool with that. I like this kind. Off to BB&B. A couple more of those. There were 8 freaking pillows that were hers. And we'd have sex, go to sleep, and she'd start trying to wrench my pillow out from under me. Do I snore a little bit? I could buy a different pillow. Okay, that would be great. Back to BB&B. A couple more. We now own 10 freaking pillows. Plus my own. I toss my pillow in the closet, try one pillow. She pulls that away from and adds it to her nest. I try a different pillow the next night. Yanks that. I get the old pillow out from the closet and she tries to take that. She's now sleeping on the Iron Throne of pillows, where the corners of pillows are poking out everywhere. And as with the Iron Throne, she's clearly uncomfortable because all the pillows in the world can't sate her lust for a cushiony ride to dreamland. Unlike the Iron Throne, the average age of these pillows is less than a fortnight. So, finally, sex notwithstanding, I laid it down. I get 1 pillow, not 0 pillows. If I wake up and I have 0 pillows, we're done. She never took the pillow, but we ended things shortly thereafter. If you loved me, you'd give me your pillow. I like that woman, really, but I dodge a bullet. I can't imagine living with someone like that when if I later had money. No, you don't get the new car. I get the new car. Number. The new TV means I get to watch it, not you. Etc. Something seriously screwed up happened with that woman in her childhood and I never quite put my finger on it, but it was I must have all things to feel loved. It bled into a few other things. I would get 1 serving of ice cream out of the tub. She got all else. She was a lovely 5 feet 3 inches 125. Not tiny, but in no way fat. Anyway, no idea why I dealt with her for as long as I did. Well, nothing PG rated, but years later I came across wisdom of the Dalai Lama. Not getting what is sometimes a remarkable stroke of good luck. Had to check whether you were Vargas like halfway through your story. That's how strange it got. She would turn tricks at the officers club at an army base. 3-5 a night. She dropped this bomb on our honeymoon. Not a great way to start a marriage. I believe it was featuring Bragg that had a scandal similar to that. Friend of a friend was caught up in that mess. Back in the mid 80s an enlisted man brought his wife on board a ship in Norfolk and she was paid for her services. That he has an infuriating habit of throwing things away that shouldn't be thrown away. He is an extremely clean person, and I love that about him, but he takes it overboard. For example, we will have a half a tub of butter and see another tub at the store that's on sale for a decent price. So we will buy the butter that's on sale. Well, instead of using up the half tub of butter at home, he will just throw it away and open the new one. He does this not just with butter, but with every single food item you can think of. He also throws away things that in my opinion are very important, but in his opinion are causing clutter, which he gets super anxious about. He has thrown away a DVD collection, our lease, brand new clothes that myself or my kids haven't worn yet and so in his mind never get worn, blankets, towels, shoes, ect. I tried to set up a box for him to throw everything into instead of the garbage so that way I can pull things out that I actually want and then donate the other things to charity, but that didn't last long. He literally threw the box away because it was in the way. Also learned when we got a dog that he is terrified to scold the dog for any reason or raise his voice around it because he's convinced the dog won't like him if he does those things, and that thought is devastating to him. Unfortunately, my husband is probably the sweetest, kindest person you could ever hope to meet, so it makes it really hard to stay angry at him for any reason. TLDR. Throws away things that are still useful, lets the dog do whatever he wants. The extent to which she thinks farts are funny. She let on that they were humorous before we got married, but now I realize she thinks they're goddamn hilarious. A good fart can always put a smile on her face. You lucky man. Perfect way to end an argument is to let rip the roars of Cthulhu from your butt rectum. We are now married, but after we moved in together I helped him come to the realization that his excessive gas was due not to normal human variants but to lactose intolerance. He had always lived with male roommates, but apparently they just thought it was funny. I love how guys will just neglect stuff like that because it's hilarious. That she was gay. This is significant because I am straight and assumed she was as well. Nothing. That's why it took us 7 years to get married. I told her I'm only doing this once, so we better be sure. Happy together since 2000. She's really anal about things and super type A, but is also as lazy as me, so it doesn't actually get done. Also, apparently she missed a part of our long conversations about adoption when I very clearly stated that I didn't want to adopt babies because I don't like them and they are in high demand and it's the kids that need us. She recently informed me, if we're adopting, we're getting a baby, so that's been great. I forgot you could adopt people that weren't babies and got confused. I didn't realize until after we lived together that she can't maintain one's bathroom floor dry. When she showers, I feel as though half of the time she points the shower head at the ground outside the shower. When she gets out, I imagine her shaking her body off in canine fashion. If she washes her face at the sink, I visualize her saying one small number of water for me, one handful for you, to the floor. That he had me fired from my job on my day off, and it was my birthday. I called him crying and he consoled me that night. We started dating soon after. 2 years after we got married, I overheard him talking to a group about how he got me fired from work so he could date me. I don't know, that's insanely manipulative, like almost creepy as frick. Not me, but my great-grandfather. He got married again in his 70s, to a woman in her 60s. Everyone in the family didn't like her, but my grandpa is old and she makes him happy, so everyone plays along. 8 years in, my ancestor approaches my father, who has learned a trade and knows some bookkeeping, some stuff about money. Gramp starts asking him these questions, like, how much household money do you give your wife each month? Turns out, my father was being taken for a pretty penny. This woman received hundreds of mark back in the day without carrying any of the expenses, and she bunkered it all. Apparently, she had snuggled up to the next rich dude at a seniors resort and had banked on my gramp dying from old age before her. Only, the genes are strong with my family and the old coot simply wouldn't cooperate in that matter. So my grandfather got a divorce in his mid-80s by female judge. This was the early 90s. My great-grandmother, no blood relation, learned a thing or two about my grandpa. Namely, that he was willing to go to jail to get rid of her. Such was the extent of his disgust with what she was doing. The judge first didn't want to divorce them and condemn them to die lonely, so my grandpa threatened to kill his wife in front of the judge if she didn't do it. The judge was furious and told him he'd be going to jail for the rest of his days if he did that. And my gramp, God bless his soul, told her that he had survived World War I, sleeping on the corpses of former schoolmates and eating nothing but rotten bread for weeks. The thought of a warm jail cell, with a radio, and 3 meals a day, for free, did not scare him at all. You'll be doing me a favor, Judge lady. The whole point of this is that my family can still inherit some money from me before this witch takes it all, and by sending me to the big house you'd actually make the state pay for my every expense and my burial. Do not tempt me in this. I am starting to like the idea, is what he reportedly told her. I'd say my great-grandmother learned a thing or two about the sweet old man she had been married to for 8 years a day. If nothing else, how large his balls really were. Redditors who got married too soon. What did you find out about your so after it was too late? Not me, but a cousin found out her fiance was cheating on her the night before her wedding. His response was, "This is how the world works. Grow up." The only person she told was my sister, and she was too scared to cancel anything the day of. My sister didn't tell me until we had left the area. Probably a wise choice. I have a temper and the buff fiance would have likely kicked my butt, so nobody could do anything. The marriage, thank God, only lasted about 2 months or so. The best part was my near comatose grandmother hearing about it, getting out of her chair and saying, "I'm gonna kill that son of a b." That's an awesome grandma. Got married to the wrong person when I was way too naive and I experienced. Found out after we had divorced that he'd been banging his stepmom since he was 15. I think I read that guy's AMA a few weeks back. My ex-wife was bipolar with suicidal tendencies. When we fought it progressively got worse until she started threatening to kill herself over just about anything. I divorced her 4 years ago. She killed herself in March. I feel a tremendous amount of guilt, even though I may not have been able to change what seemed like the inevitable. As a recently married person, this thread is hella depressing and I need to leave now. I was going to post something about how my wife leaves dirty dishes around and doesn't clean up after herself, but now I think I'm just going to go give her a hug. You are wise. He was bad with money. Imagine getting your paycheck, spending $60 on weed, then buying a Wii, maybe an Xbox, some games, not used, I mean new games, maybe even a game that comes with night vision goggles, then spending more money on yourself because I work hard, I deserve to enjoy my paycheck. Then imagine being 10 months behind on rent with your cable and cell phones turned off, being over $1,000K in debt to the gas and electric companies respectively. Do that for over a decade, never getting better. My rent has been on time for over a year now. My car payment is on time. My bills are paid and I can sleep at night. I have hardly any money left over but I don't care. It's better this way. He was a lying, lazy, selfish slob who wanted a housekeeper and breadwinner. We didn't have the opportunity to live together. I didn't get to meet his family. He pretended to like everything I liked and wooed me with beautiful songs. Dropped all pretense after we married. Wanted to quit work so he could work on his music. Dude, you're good, but not that good or that motivated. Wanted 2 bedrooms. Intimacy? I'll just go to your room and do my business. Business frick you. I'm outta here. TLDR. Fell for a honey voice pretender. I'll just go to your room and do my business. When your word for lovemaking is the same as for going to the bathroom, you've got a problem. The act would be done in your bedroom, which makes it appear even more to be the bathroom, where the evacuation takes place. While dating, she seemed to be an industrious, independent woman. Now all she wants to do is quit her job so she can sit at home, clean and cook for maybe an hour a day, and read erotic vampire novels. Seriously. I keep asking my GF if I can do this. She refuses me to. Those erotic novels don't read themselves, you know. I'm late to the thread, but my wife would say it was my drug addiction. I hid it from her, then about a year into our marriage she found out. It was pretty fricked up of me to hide something like that from her. She stayed with me when she could have left. We are happy as we have ever been now and I am not living a lie anymore. Not me, but my brother. He and his ex-wife were living with her parents trying to save money to buy a house. After 6 years or so they should have had about $80,000 in the bank account that she controlled. He looked one day and there was $7,000 in there. She was a closet gambler and put away $73,000. He didn't even know their wedding was paid for on credit cards. That she was way too immature to deal with real life issues because she never had to deal with things on her own. She went from relying on her parents to working a dead-end job, eventually quitting that, to relying on me. The first 6 years were great, then crap hit the fan. It all went downhill from there. She liked dongs. Lots of dongs. Dongs that didn't belong to me. Did you say if you had as many dongs sticking out of you as you have had stuck in you, you would look like a porcupine? That despite him seeming like a modern man when I met him, washing his share of the dishes and cooking, and apparently liking me for being a non-traditional, non-housewifely woman. That was just his courtship personality. As soon as we got married and bought an apartment, we had lived together for a year before marriage, he suddenly revealed that he expected me to do far more of the housework than him, although we both worked the same hours, and he would bully me into accepting all his decisions about everything, and getting angry if I ever disagreed with him. When I finally left him, he said, "How can you not be happy with me? I never hit you," which to me kind of said it all. Courtship personality. That's a good way to put it. I'll have to remember that one. My husband started out with the fantasy of wife swapping. We talked about it often. I wasn't really into it, but he persisted. He told me I was boring and we needed to spice things up. He went on websites and chatted up other couples. Fast forward a couple of years, he put naked pictures of me on AF, used my real name, chatted up guys all the time telling them I was good in bed even though I was too curvy. I had zero self-confidence left. I'm finally leaving him, but the only reason I'm still alive is that I have a son and I don't want him to grow up thinking about women the way his father does. My wife and I got married after knowing each other 5 months. I found out pretty quick that she was insanely jealous. I literally couldn't turn my head without her coming unglued. It didn't help that I was something of a pig. Good news, we worked it out and are still happily married, almost 39 years now. She is still the most beautiful woman I've ever met and is my best friend as well as my wife. 3 kids and 7 grandkids as well. People can change if you give them a chance. It sort of feels as though his wife came into the room at the end of the first paragraph. When my brother married, he discovered that my sister-in-law likes to clean a lot. She found out that my brother is extremely messy and is grouchy all the time, not just when he is hungry, but they are actually happy. Now she is a little bit less obsessed with cleaning everything and he is much cleaner. Serious response: that he has severe anger issues and Dr. Jekyll MR hides on me regularly. I have told him that he needs to seek help or we need to go to counseling together. He refuses. I'm a mental health nurse, but he needs hardcore therapy beyond our 4 walls. This morning, he woke up BC the cat was scratching the carpet, proceeded to yell at me for 30 minutes, stomp around the house searching for the cat so he can skin her and hang her from a tree. I asked him several times to stop yelling. He said that I should be as upset as he is. I wasn't. He put his ring on the dresser and is now sleeping downstairs. He wanted my rings back. They are sitting on the dresser next to his. The next move is his. I've told him his anger would be the end of us and it seems he's made his choice. If he refuses counseling, then there's nothing more you can do. If you don't leave now, you might look back in 30 years at the life you wasted. I'd have to say that I found out too late that I had anger issues I developed from the way my parents raised me, but thanks to my so they are nearly gone. Les didn't marry too soon, but definitely too young and mature. He was anyway. Ex and I married at 25. Life got tricky at 30 with our first kid. He'd been driving force behind having kids, but didn't like how it changed our lifestyle. Second kid at 32, was born very sick and nearly died. He couldn't cope, and started affair with woman at work. Escaped within 18 months, ran off with her. Left me holding the bag with a disabled kid. He married that woman from work, and he's finally grown up now, is 46. They have an adopted kid, but also a full-time nanny and tons of household help, and money. They don't have the daily life stresses we'd had. He's trying to be involved with our kids, but is mostly uncle daddy and buys them stuff. Frick that guy. He was abusive, and controlling, and just overall freaking insane. Like throwing a hissy fit in the grocery store because I wouldn't buy him stuff to make iced tea. Insane. Now I look back and I should have seen the warning signs, but you never think your husband is going to choke slam you on the kitchen floor for a disagreement over a chicken recipe. He also slept with one of my friends, although I never confronted either of them about it because I didn't even give a crap and was ready to end my life at that point. Then he left me and it was freaking awesome. It was the nicest thing he's ever done for me. Although it's sad that the nicest thing he ever did for you is ditching you. I'm really happy that you're better off. I hope you're loving your life now. Time to quit lurking and actually post. I married a man I'd been dating for 3 months because on our second date he broke down and confided that we was dying of terminal leukemia. He said he wanted to make the most of his remaining months and marry me. Being 23 and dumb, I believed him without asking for any proof and said yes. My family all rallied behind me, believing him to be a dying man, and threw us an incredible wedding even though they barely knew the guy. He refused treatment, playing the wish to die with dignity card, and finally after 4 months of marriage and no decline in his health, I confronted him. It was a lie, an elaborate lie. My husband is a sociopath and pathological liar. Wish I'd known that. We used to be very good at keeping a clean house. Then work hours increase and we both just slowly gave up. Not hoarder level give up, but more like foul bachelor frog gave up. Laundry gets washed but not folded sort of thing. We both went into this thinking we were cleanly and instead we both ended up being lazy. But at least we're in it together. And we're both miserable in a dirty house but neither one of us wants to clean it. So we can't really be upset at the other because it is our problem. But I can see where if one of us was different this could have been a huge problem. Instead we just order more pizza. Well, there's always pizza box forwards, so you guys got that going for you which is nice. She's better with money than I ever imagined. She actually gets more beautiful as she ages. She's a better mother than I could have hoped for. She's generally more patient than I am. She's responsible like an adult should be. She's carefree in all the right ways, and she butches through a job she hates to help support our family. She's willing to talk about things, even when she doesn't want to. Sometimes, she lets me be little spoon, and I'm almost 7 inches taller than she is. It's too late to go back, and that's 100% a-okay with me. Met him at 17, married at 19, first kid at 20, 10 years of working when I could, having 4 more kids and helping him through college, writing papers for him when he couldn't, getting us in classes I wasn't taking. When his diploma came in the mail he looked at me and said, "I know I said when I was finished it would be your turn, but I don't think you are smart enough for college. I don't need you anymore, so I'm moving in with my girlfriend." TLDR. After 10 years and 5 kids learned my husband was a narcissist. After telling me he had a honorable discharge from the Marines I found out that was a lie and he had been in the brig for 18 months and had a temper that burned like 1,000 suns. As soon as I found out the truth the sweet man I married turned into a monster and I fled. It took 5 years to finalize the divorce and I moved out of the country after he showed up at my work with a knife. I now live in Canada and have remarried after 10 years of trust issues. In my experience someone's personality isn't fully developed until they turn about 25 or so. What you like at 21 might be completely different than what you like at 25 and you might turn out to be completely incompatible. When I think about my ex-wife now I can't even imagine what I ever saw in her. But at 21 she was exactly what I thought I always wanted. Nothing. Not a damn thing did I find out after it was too late. It was all there before, and I realized it, but the wheels were already spinning, and I didn't have the guts at the time to call it off, and decided instead to ride it out. Kids, do not do what I did. Heed warning signs. That she likes to get the toothpaste out of the top of the tube instead of squeezing it out at the bottom. Every day as I brush my teeth I am yelling at her in my head. Divorce her immediately. You don't want to look back in 5 years time and wish you hadn't divorced her sooner. She has god-awful flatulence that will peel the paint off the walls and make a grown man beg for mercy. She's at her worst between 2 to 3 AM and let me tell you, I know it's coming and I really don't sleep well anymore because of it. During this time I've become quite religious, hoping to find salvation from any deity really maybe one of them will save me from this stinky heck this woman emits. There might be something in her diet she can change to reduce stop that. I stupidly got married to a woman I just met as a way of saying goodbye to a world I'd become disappointed in, my old mates, a career that had grown stale and a gorgeous but ultimately boring long-term live-in girlfriend. My new wife dropped all pretenses a month into our marriage, refusing to sleep with me, spending all day in bed on the phone and, ultimately, moving to the States to find work. Fortunately, she agreed to a divorce shortly afterwards. That he did in fact want children. We'd been together for 4 years before we got married and he knew how serious I was about not wanting kids and always told me he felt the same. Then, literally weeks after the wedding he started dropping when we have children into conversations with others. I confronted him about it and he gave me this really blank look and said, but we're married now. We're not together anymore. I had to bring my girlfriend over to read this one, then promise that I would never do such a thing. She doesn't want children, and while I always pictured myself having them, I can certainly see the upsides of not procreating. He is about as empathic as a goldfish. Last Monday I received the news an acquaintance of mine was murdered by her ex-boyfriend and her body was found by her young daughter, the little girl I used to babysit. His response: what do you want me to say? I don't know these people and I don't care. I don't know why I even try. When my now wife's grandmother died early in our relationship, I felt nothing for her grandmother, who I'd met for 20 minutes once, but I felt sympathy for my wife and comforted her. That he could lie to me just as easily as he ever has to anyone else. We married a month after I turned 20 because he was about to deploy. A few months ago, found out that he'd been smoking for over a year and had managed to build up a decent amount of credit card debt on mostly online gaming purchases. Big fight that one. He'd had problems as a kid and teen, not a great family life, emotionally abusive father when he was young, and he was really good at lying. I guess I thought that because he loves me, it would be all different and he'd never lie to me. I learned. However, with that said, I want to say what an absolutely amazing man I married. The things he did, yeah, they happened. But since they've happened, he has made unbelievable strides towards changing. When I finally found out about him smoking and the credit card debt, he broke down and admitted that he had some problems and that he understood that what he was doing was hurting our marriage. He's switched to e-cigs and is working his way down to no nicotine. His credit card is sitting in the bedside table and I'm the one who opens the bills now so that there are no secrets. I verify a lot of the financial information he gives me as far as what's been spent, but he doesn't mind and tells me every time. It's not perfect. There have been mess ups. But I am so blessed to know that while he is not the perfect man, he loves me enough and values me enough to want to change what he's doing because he knows it hurts me. We married way too young, but we're growing up together, and I think when we're a little ways further down the road, it's going to be a beautiful marriage. I got married to a girl in like 3rd grade. Some say we rushed into it. Needless to say, she only soon after was seen kissing a kid in my class. The marriage only lasted that lunch period. What a W. My wife has never seen Star Wars, any of them. We have 2 framed Star Wars posters in our living room and she doesn't understand them. We sat down to watch A New Hope and she fell asleep. She freaking fell asleep. I was 16. I didn't know he was in a religious cult that believed in a woman's submission to her husband. Leaving the cult got me shunned by every friend I've ever made. I didn't get married too soon, but I learned after marrying my husband that the reason I never heard him pass gas was because, and I quote, I wasn't gonna chance you hearing me fart. You've still had the chance to leave. We are married now. I don't give a frick. The amount of gas that erupts from his butt on a daily basis should be in the Guinness Book of World Records. That he would not communicate about anything, whatever I wanted, whatever I needed. Too freaking bad for me. If I asked for anything, it was a fight. We were married at 20 and we're divorcing at 42. Nobody can say I didn't try. I found out my now ex was schizophrenic. I actually found out after we were married almost 8 years and after our divorce was finalized. He acted normally, a bit quirky at times, but I didn't care. Something really chafed towards the end, but he wouldn't talk to me or seek help. He confessed after the divorce that he had been hearing voices since he was a teenager. How do you not tell someone this before you get married? Once married and once in a long-term relationship. The marriage, just that we were different people. There was a strong attraction, but she just wanted to watch soaps on telly, wanted me to do a low-value job, basically wanted a barely working class lifestyle, while I wanted to get educated, own a house, go holidays, etc. She found someone else after we split and is living that life now. Long-term relationship. That basically she wanted to be the little wifey with lots of kids, stay home mom, etc. Not wrong with that apart from pretending she wanted the same as me. I found out when the pill malfunctioned. I eventually realized about 4 years later when she had another 2 kids to 2 separate baby daddies. Her cunning plan appeared to be keep the relationship sweet until she managed to get pregnant. then demand to get married. She managed the wedding on the 3rd. She's happy now. Happily divorced people of Reddit. When did you realize your marriage was over and it was time to file? When I stopped being angry or hurt about angering and hurtful things. I realized I didn't care anymore, and it was over. When I realized that no matter how much I compromised on matters, she never budged on anything. And when I decided to see a counselor because I thought there might be something wrong with me, and after a few sessions, she told me it sounded like I was in an abusive relationship. That was an eye-opener. This happened to me as well. My emotionally abusive ex insisted that I needed therapy, but after a few sessions the therapist told me that I was perfectly fine and that I was being manipulated and emotionally abused. I left her pretty soon after that when she flipped out on me for getting her the wrong birthday present. I came home from work one night and she told me she was pregnant, but there was no joy in her eyes, just the please don't be mad look. I asked why she is acting weird and she told me it wasn't mine. I got a lawyer within a week. Got to hand it to her. At least she told you. Not everyone has that courage. When we realized we were living two separate lives and there really wasn't a joint one, aside from the kids. Our divorce strategy: keep it easy on the kids. They stayed in the house. We rented an apartment nearby and we swapped back and forth every few days. They saw both of us a lot and saw we could get along, cooperate even if we weren't going to stay married. Look at the end game, moving ahead, and not the past, anger, guilt, etc. It keeps you cool instead of fighting. Try not to give money to lawyers. Find ones that specialize in mediation and doing the paperwork. Every time there is an issue, sit down and say, we can let the lawyers decide and take all of the money, or we can work it out and keep the money for ourselves. A divorce can cost $200k, $50k, or less than $10k. Ours was the last. And a bonus, we still get along socially. We didn't need to split up the friends, etc. When we both realized that if we had to go back and do it all over again, we wouldn't have gotten married. Many of our issues were probably fixable or could have been mitigated. But when she said she wouldn't do it over again and I realized I felt the same way, that was pretty much it. We were fighting, and she knocked a stool over. Actually, she picked it up and was going to throw it at me, but changed her mind. She put the stool down and it fell over. My 3-year-old son came in, righted the stool, and screamed, "Don't knock over my stool." We both realized that we weren't raising him properly. We would have stayed together probably for a long time if we didn't have kids, but we didn't want to frick them all up more. So we divorced. We're friends now. Great friends. Sometimes we live together, different rooms like roommates. This story has the best ending in this thread. Glad you two could work it all out like grown-ups. My ex and I were arguing all the time. We were both insecure, both dependent, and both unfulfilled for different reasons. I thought by taking things slowly, year-long relationship, 3-year engagement, that the love would come. I knew I appreciated her. Lord knows she was the perfect wife, but I kept feeling like we were just friends. Because I just wasn't feeling it. She felt unfulfilled by my lack of passion. At some point during an argument, we both stopped and looked at each other. It was as if, at the very same moment, we realized that we weren't in love. She had the courage to say it out loud even though I didn't. She said, "I think we both know where this is headed." Of course, I knew it too. But those words were so heavy that my mouth couldn't say them. All I could muster was, "Yeah, I guess so." So we split up. The first year was difficult, although we stayed married on paper. I guess it was just to be sure. After a second year, I reached out to her and asked if we could file. We were much better by then and actually friendly toward each other. We filed on our own, without a lawyer, for $78 in court costs. We became friends through it all and eventually helped each other with dating advice. I think we kept a really great friendship for 5 more years until she remarried, and we decided out of respect for her new marriage that we'd put our friendship on the shelf. We haven't spoken since, and last I heard, she was still married to the same guy. She's a wonderful woman and the perfect wife, in my opinion. She just wasn't the perfect wife for me, and I wasn't the right man for her. That's probably the saddest one I've read here, for some reason. When I realized that she was actually incapable of compromise, that no time in our 20-year history had she ever done so, and that she never would. My ex was the same way, even about little things. I don't think I ever got to pick the movie we watched together. Woke up after a horrible accident with my back broken in multiple places and at the time was temporarily paralyzed. At the time we didn't know whether it was permanent or temporary. Company CEO asked if he wanted him to call my wife. I said no. I didn't tell her for a week. When I got home, it wasn't the injury she was upset about, it was the fact she would have to work to pick up the slack from me being down and out. We separated a week later. When a thought of suicide briefly crossed my mind, I've never had issues with depression before or since, so that was a wake-up call. I had one of those moments of clarity where saw two paths in front of me. One was get divorced, deal with all that bullcrap and have at least a snowball's chance in heck of being happy someday. The other was stay where I was, keep becoming more and more depressed and eventually put my kids through something even worse than a divorce. I chose wisely. Glad to still see you here, mate. I knew about 6 months after the wedding that I had made a huge mistake. I stuck it out for a long time though. We were divorced after 12 years. In hindsight, the sticking it out was the mistake. At the time I thought it was my obligation to keep trying to make it work. I have been happily divorced since 1998. I'm getting married this year. I need to stop reading this thread. No sex for a year? Check. Constantly belittling me? Check. No job or attempt to get a job while I work too? Check. Not bothering to clean or cook and making me do it all at the end of a double shift? Check. But what really killed it for me was I was at my parents' house for Thanksgiving. She tells me how much she hates my family, nieces, nephews, and we were never coming back. Screw that. Screw that with a 6-foot-long wooden broom handle. When you hate the person you are when with her, the thought of waking up and going to work is the most freeing feeling you've got. Also, when you see your 2-year-old son playing quietly in the corner, not wanting to see anyone after his mother and I fight over every little thing. Bad relationships have horrible consequences on kids. He's so much happier now that his parents aren't constantly screaming. I married a US Marine while I was in college. When we were dating he was my best friend. Things were fantastic. Immediately after the wedding he told me your role as a wife is to honor me and respect me. Okay, I thought that's a no-brainer of course I will. Almost immediately, as if a switch had been flicked, he became a different person. Commanding, dominant, superior. If I did something he didn't like he would scream at me, tell me how I wasn't respecting him, and verbally tear me to pieces. It wasn't long before I believed him and became a shell of the person I used to be. Verbal abuse from the person you love can, and often does, hurt you the most. This displeased him more, which turned the verbal assaults to physical ones. Still, not wanting to give up on a marriage, I suggested counseling. He refused, told me I wasn't worth it. I was stuck, miserable in my own life, not wanting to give up on us and too afraid broken to try. I didn't want to be a person who gave up too soon even though I was in shreds because the person who promised to love me forever was ruining my life. Until the night he beat me so badly I ended up in the hospital with multiple lacerations and broken bones. A friend helped me to move out of the state, back with family for a while, then though the divorce proceedings. Years of therapy and a great support system later and I'm the best I've ever been. It's the people that switch all of a sudden when you change roles that scare me. Getting married, or having kids and all of a sudden you are no longer treated the same. Mine is almost trivial in comparison to these other whammies. It sounds odd, but bear with me. We were in the car, and a song came on the radio. I was in a good mood. It was spring. The top on the convertible was down. All around lovely day. I started humming and nodding my head, and I about halfway through it, looked at my husband and said this is my favorite song lately. Without missing a beat, he reached over and immediately changed the station. I didn't think anything about it until the way back from where we were going, and then it hit me. My husband had been actively making my life miserable for years, intentionally. Anything I enjoyed, he would take away or punish me for experiencing. With this new epiphany, everything started to make sense. The constant criticism, the intense anger for something inconsequential after I'd spent time with a friend, the insults. If he really loved me, he would have let me have my happiness by keeping that stupid song on. More importantly, he hadn't changed it until I voiced that it was giving me joy. Even if I absolutely despised a song that he professed to be his favorite, I would have scrunched my nose up and dealt with it instead of turning it off. Because that's what love is sometimes. Our marriage was never happy, but I didn't realize that it was emotionally abusive until that moment in the car. What a dong. I agree it seems small compared to finding yourself in bed with someone else, but I also dated a guy once who seemed mad if I expressed happiness and it's so incredibly belittling. You kind of shut down because you get this feeling that liking something is somehow embarrassing. I hope you sing all the goddamn time now if you want to. For me it was when I accidentally heard him tell a person who was our friend I love you over the phone. I guess I got out of the shower at the wrong moment and he thought I didn't hear him. It was after that I started to notice he would go on errands for stupid crap like coffee, groceries, or office supplies at like 9 PM and come home 2-3 hours later. He did all this while I was 7-9 months pregnant and he walked out a few days after I have birth. Day after my birthday. He also got to a lawyer before I did and filed for divorce the day before our 6th anniversary. Well, unfortunately, it was when I found out she was having a kid with someone else. But it should have been when I realized that her feelings didn't matter to me anymore. Habit is such an intoxicating thing it can be impossible at times to truly reflect on your own actions. The night he spent 7 hours drunkenly bitching and complaining about me. When he would get in a mood he'd turn his crap music up really loud, then attempt to sing along but make the lyrics about me. The last time he did this to me was my breaking point. I'd already started making plans to move out, but this time was just it. The next day, after I'd gotten very little sleep, I felt like I was in a daze, and I couldn't stop crying, just sobbing. I then realized I was in mourning, my marriage was over. Now, people look at me like I'm insane when I say my divorce was the best money I ever spent. I went on vacation after the divorce was final, my first solo vacation of my adult life, and it was amazing. When I realized that after 16 years, there were no longer any meaningful benefits, that is, love, trust, intimacy, teamwork, respect, companionship, etc. that justified the cost of staying, emotional abuse, emptiness, loneliness, poor relationship model for children, etc. and I would rather be alone than in such a valueless relationship. When I found the text messages to my so-called best friend, she did me a huge favor. I was already wanting out but would not leave just because I wasn't happy. Our therapist realized that my ex-wife was already cheating on me with a mutual friend, and she said you both have to stop hanging out with that guy completely until you two are back on solid ground. Ex-wife flipped out and went on a teenager-like screed about how neither me nor the therapist understand her, and that neither of us is even listening to anything she says. Her relationship with the other dude is not unhealthy. We need to focus on all the problems Roy Biggins is causing our marriage, etc. After the session, my ex-wife says we need a new therapist. She's not going back there again. Then, she suggests we have dinner with the other guy. As I was walking to dinner, I realized that this thing was probably not salvageable. When he packed his bags again, threatening to leave and deriding me as a useless piece of baggage, holding him back professionally, codependent that I was, begging him to stay had always been my previous response. That day a kind of clarity settled over me and I laughed at him and said go. Heard yesterday he's living in a van, which pretty much summarizes his entire existence after leaving us. One day, I showed up to work and my co-worker asked to speak to me. She had something she needed to tell me about my husband. She informed me that my next door neighbor, a close friend of hers, told her that my husband was going to her house during the day to smoke pot and leaving all 3 kids alone in the house. Ages 6, 2 and 4 months. Definitely not old enough to be not old enough to be not old enough to be not old. She also said that our oldest would come tell him that the baby was crying and it would take him another 10 minutes before he would leave to check on her. That was the last straw for me. I put up with a lot of crap from him, but leaving our children alone to get high was unacceptable. I planned my escape over the next 3 weeks and left with the children. That was over a year ago. I'm happier now than I have been in years. I'm so proud of you for leaving him. I remember when my neighbor's oldest kid would come over to our house to tell my mom his infant sister was crying. They were all hungry, and they had no idea where their mom was. My mom practically adopted those kids, on top of being a single mom of 3 kids and being unemployed, until Cass finally decided to get off their butt. Thought we had a happy, honest relationship. Then I caught her in a lie, did some research and found she had been lying for the duration of our 2.5-year marriage. Decided I couldn't live a marriage based on lies, so I asked for a divorce. After the divorce I took some time to think about it and realized I was happier single than I ever was married. I'm glad it happened now. When she chose an overpriced bar of soap over a lifetime experience. We were staying in Venice and our first morning was spent shopping along one street instead of exploring the city. There was so much to see and do, yet all she wanted to do was poke around these few stores. I humored her for a while because it's what she wanted to do, but it got a bit silly after several hours looking in generic boutiques when there isn't anything but generic city waiting for us. She bought one thing, a small bar of soap from Lush, a store you will find in most any European city, sorta like Bath and Body Works. The bar came in a tin box. Hours later we are having coffee just around the corner from the Piazza San Marco and the sun is getting ready to set. I was hoping to take her to the top of the San Marco Campanile where we could gaze over the entire city, across the Adriatic, north to the Alps and across the Italian mainland, but she noticed her box of soap had melted during the day. She demanded we get back to Lush so she could get a new one. I told her about the bell tower. To further my point, the sun was starting to paint everything orange and there was no line to go up the tower. The moment was there, right in front of us. Yet she crossed her arms and demanded we go back to the store before it closed. I went up the bell tower. She didn't come. This event added to so much else that suggested she lived life with blinders on. She couldn't notice the small things, appreciate beauty or find joy in the world around her. It took me a while after that to go through with the divorce, but I knew that moment she refused to come with me to see that sunset. Not me, but a couple of friends. When they realized they'd financially be better off divorced. She's now a single working mother of 4. He's paying her child support. She now rents his house. They pay a lot less in income tax now. They bought a second house they rent out with the budget the whole procedure freed up. And they're still happily together. Just not officially. Not an expert or anything, but I think married couples can file taxes separately. When my parents were in a road accident on their way to visit us and afterwards they were phoning so we could help sort out getting them the rest of their way to us without a now trashed car. X says, "Can you tell them to stop calling? It's getting really annoying. Sorry, my parents' near-death accident is an inconvenience, you selfish D." Today, I've literally been sitting in my room in the Holiday Inn for 20 minutes. I've just left my spouse after 7 years. Relationship sucked. We fought over nothing every day. Couldn't have a conversation without arguing. We both felt the other should do more, but neither one of us thought we should do more cause the other person was a B and wouldn't appreciate it. Hopefully the future is brighter. When I was in labor for my daughter, our second child, he had no interest with being at the hospital with me. He spent the entire time on his cell phone trying to find a friend to bring him weed to make his night more bearable. He wouldn't walk the halls with me because that's what your mother is for. My labor was induced and very short. He had been taking a nap and was upset when he was awoken for me to push. He refused to help hold my leg up with the nurse, and after her birth he didn't want to help me get onto the stretcher to be brought to my room. The epidural hadn't worn off. Then, before I was even wheeled out of the birthing room, he announced he was leaving and took off. It was the happiest and saddest day of my life. I knew I had to leave, but I was also terrified of what he would do if he had joint custody of my kids. The 29th of March, 2015. The day a Reddit thread was the final straw and convinced at least a handful of couples to get a divorce. Probably. I keep saying I'm going to do it. I told my mom my marriage was over in the summer of 2012. I told her mom in October of 2013. I guess the fact I haven't done anything yet makes people think I'm not serious, but honestly it's a scary process to initiate. I'm afraid of losing my 3 kids. I'm afraid of losing all my money. But I really want to be happy. It wasn't the time she stabbed me with an ink pen for the second time. It wasn't the time she lied to me about going to the doctor for a pregnancy checkup and instead having an abortion of our third baby. It wasn't the time she tricked me by saying she was leaving if I didn't get a vasectomy. I was trying to save my marriage at that point, and then moving out anyways 2 months later. It wasn't because of the affair with the co-worker at the church she worked at. It was the time she kidnapped my kids from me for 2 months. I missed Father's Day and my birthday with them. That was the time I decided it was really over, and no matter what, she was not ever welcome back into our home. I didn't kick her out, she had an apartment by then. I filed the day after Father's Day. We're still in the process because of the custody fight, but it's the best thing that's ever happened to me in the marital sense. I worked days and he worked nights, so he was supposed to take care of our newborn son during the day. Unfortunately, he also had some nonsense FMLA claim that basically let him stay home 4 days out of the week to play video. I came home after a 10-hour day at my brand new high-stress job. I see that my 3-month-old son is in the playpen kicking and screaming and his face and body are bright red. My husband had his noise-cancelling headphones turned up all the way back to our son, playing LOL about a foot away. I picked up my son. My husband still hadn't even noticed I'd entered, calmed him down and put him in his crib with a bottle, then walked back into the living room and knocked my husband's monitors to the ground. When asked what the heck he was doing, he replied, "All he ever wants is to be picked up, and I don't have time." Deuce lowlife. As a husband and a father, and someone that loves to play video games, that guy is a freaking child and a lowlife failure. I would never put a goddamn video game above spending time with my family. When I gave her the ultimatum that it was either me and our daughter, or her friends and M, of course she chose the latter, but 6 months later she was in jail and I had full custody. When he told me he hated me and our 2-week-old baby, the finalization of my divorce was the best day of my life other than my daughter being born. The next best day was about 2 months ago when his parental rights were terminated. I did all the cooking, dishes, grocery shopping, my own laundry, took the kids to and from daycare school, and yard work, all the while holding down a job that required me to work 8-5 and then be on call through the night more often than not. I should also add that I was the primary breadwinner and bailed her butt out of debt more than I should have. She would spend insane amounts of money on dolls, boxes of refrigerator magnets, and once spent $500 on a case of shampoo from the Philippines. She once told her cousin that she didn't have a spending problem but I didn't make enough. She also worked full time and did her own and the kids' laundry until they got old enough to do their own. She also was the primary cleaner of the house when it got done. When she lost her job and was unemployed, it was an eye-opener. I would get home from work and the dishes would be piled in the sink and I would have to wash them so I could use them to make dinner. I should add that we had a dishwasher that was in good working order. I asked the kids what she did all day and they said she sat on the computer all day watching Lady Gaga videos. This went on for months and then one day I noticed that after coming home, doing dishes and making dinner, she served herself first, not our youngest child who still needed help. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I did everything, and if I'm going to do everything I might as well do it on my own. It was actually on the second or third day of our honeymoon. I brought up the topic of tightening our belts a little to save up for a house, and she accused me of trying to run her life. I tried to make it work for another 2 years or so, but I knew I had made a huge mistake very early on. At a wedding last night, a bridesmaid rambled on into a 15-minute speech about her own bipolar disorder and eventually had to be awkwardly stopped. What's the most painful wedding speech incident you've ever witnessed? My wife's aunt was wasted at my sister-in-law's wedding and began a toast talking about the bride and her husband. After about 20 seconds she started talking about her dead parents and her failed relationships. She later tried, awkwardly, to have a friend of the groom dance and dip her, which resulted in him dropping her on the floor and walking away while she rolled on the floor showing her sequin underwear. At my sister's wedding, my alcoholic uncle went up and said a couple words. Them being, "I'm surprised you managed to have a successful wedding. How did this happen without your mom being the over-controlling bee that she is?" A silence like no other. If the mother is an over-controlling bee, then that was pure win. At my parents' wedding, the priest started with "We are gathered at this funeral today." The worst part is he started going on with the typical funeral speech until he was stopped. To be fair, he was well past retirement age. That's just hilarious though. At my brother-in-law's wedding, the grandmother of the bride was asked to say grace before the meal. My father and I happened to be standing by the bar after getting one last drink before it closed during the meal. We figured we would stand there during the 30 seconds or so while she blessed the food. She pulls out 3 pieces of paper, completely full front and back, and starts in on the history of the bride's family. Here is what so and so is doing now, when and where everyone has moved into their current homes. Updates on nieces, nephews, cousins' parents, grandparent, everyone. No one knew she was going to get up there and talk for 15+ minutes about people nobody cared about. My dad and I actually finished our drinks and ordered 2 more by the time she was done. I refer to it as the 3-drink grace. At my cousin's wedding, the priest made a long speech going on and on about how wonderful and responsible it was of the couple to get married once they got pregnant out of wedlock. Most of the bride's family did not yet know she was pregnant. Went to my uncle's wedding a while back. His bride had been divorced and chose her family pastor to officiate. The pastor called my uncle her ex-husband's name during the vows multiple times. My family was not happy. Same kinda thing happened at a friend's wedding. During his long, affectionate speech, the father of the bride kept saying the name of her ex repeatedly. Groom's father made a speech along the lines of, "We knew she was a keeper when he brought her home and we heard them fricking in the bathroom." Awkward. The groom's mother, who apparently has issues, faked an epileptic fit because the bride was getting too much attention. When my husband and I first started dating, he took me as his date to the wedding of a friend. During the reception, as the groom, my husband's friend, and his new bride was dancing to a nice romantic song, the DJ suddenly switched to "Sitting on the Dock of the Bay" by Otis Redding. This was the mid-1990s and the song was out of place considering the other music that had been played so far. As I watched the couple dance, I noticed that the wife had this look of disgust on her face, and her husband seemed to be pleading with her. He looked upset, but she looked pissed. I nudged my date and asked what was going on, and he told me that the song had a double meaning. Groom and bride broke up once and he hooked up with a girl on the dock of the bay. Tada. His friends knew about this, some sort of drunken encounter, and he confessed to his girlfriend when they got back together. His friends, using that term loosely, paid the DJ to play the song, which resulted in 1p off bride. Pretty tacky of his friends. I thought, you don't do that at someone's wedding. As a DJ who's done weddings, nobody requests anything without running it by the bride or groom first, ever. Not even if you tried to throw a $20 at me. I asked my dad to walk me down the aisle for my wedding. My dad, well, he's a bit of an odd fellow. Probably has Asperger's, very socially awkward, but he means well and his heart is in the right place. He was very proud to walk me down the aisle and wanted to make sure he did a good job. So he polled some married female friends of his to get their thoughts on their experience walking down the aisle. Most of them replied with some variation of, "Oh, there was so much going on and it all went by so fast." I don't remember too much about that part, actually, so my dad, bless his heart, took that to mean their biggest regret was not making the walking down the aisle part memorable. So he decided he would have to make me remember. All of this he explains to me, just as we're about to begin the procession. He says, "Don't worry, deep platypus, just follow my instructions." And so we begin to proceed, and just as we near the rows and rows of people, he begins barking instructions. "Look over here, now look over there, smile at this person, commit this to your memory, now look back to the left, now the right, slow the pace down, now look to the front, look at fiance, smile at fiance," and so on and so forth, all the way down the aisle. Meanwhile, I'm trying to communicate to him through the smile plastered on my face. Yep, it's okay, I think I got it. And everyone watching was shooting us confused looks. Well, I guess it worked, cause it's not something I think I'll ever forget. I almost forgot this goodie in my receiving line at my wedding. This woman, who I have never met before, gave me a long depressing talk about how selfish it is not to get pregnant right away. Okay, great, enjoy the refreshments. I got this one nailed. Wedding in North Carolina. Father of the bride is also the pastor. Bride's sister is a recovering addict who has been clean long enough to be trusted to be a bridesmaid. Big mistake. Starts normal enough. Bridal party and bride and groom all up there and pastor, father, starts talking. Then I notice bridesmaid sister slowly falling forward and catching herself a few times. Then she starts swaying even more. Pastor notices but keeps rolling. Swaying gets worse. Friend of the family gets up and goes to stand behind her to catch her in case she falls. At this point she decides it would be a good time to ask her mom, in front row, to borrow some money. She does so loudly. Mom and everyone else ignore her but she asks again more loudly. It's clear by her speech she is lit. At this point the pastor pauses and asks her to be quiet. Wrong move. She begins to berate her father, the pastor using language not intended for church. The family friend standing behind her tries to lead her away but she turns and slaps him. He picks her up caveman style over the shoulder and starts to walk out a nearby door while she is screaming. He walks through the doorway and she grabs the frame and holds eye. He breaks away but not before the bridesmaid gets in a few more F-bombs. The pastor finishes like nothing happens. You had me at North Carolina. My cousin married a Mormon boy a few years back. Our aunt officiated it and our entire family was so proud of her, and all loved the guy. The guy's mother though was very into her religion. Almost convinced the groom's entire side of the family not to go because my cousin had visible tattoos, but the groom and his brothers convinced her not to. At the wedding she broke into a toast that was not planned, nor requested, where she essentially said that she hoped that during my cousin's life she could look to the LDS church for truth and hopefully be able to ask God for forgiveness for her sins and be allowed into heaven. There was a very awkward silence afterward, with even most of her family looking embarrassed, but was broken by my aunt yelling out "We love you Libby," which prompted lots of cheers. The groom and some other cousins of mine promptly asked the mother to leave while others of us consoled the bride who was in tears. As an ex-Mormon, this is exactly what I am afraid of happening at my wedding. The matron of honor and best man were married, so they gave their speeches together and talked the whole time about their wedding marriage. The church wedding of an old friend of mine from university was held in a rather nice church in the middle of a smallish touristy town here in Germany, so the ceremony was somewhat not really private. There was a nice older lady making sure the few tourists didn't interfere. Anyway, half through the ceremony a middle-aged woman managed to get through, goes up front next to the couple and shouts, "I just wanted to ask what the church has to say about all these child suckers being discovered within the church recently." The groom has a great sense of humor and usually has good quick comebacks with even stronger wording. However, in this kind of situation I have no idea what he would do. It was his wedding and I know that he could also throw a good punch. Luckily the lady was escorted out rather quickly. Groom bride priest punches B in face. So sorry, but this isn't the church of child freaking. We're the B punching ministry of righteous justice. Now gfo before I go next door and invite the congregation of the inappropriate wedding interrupters round for an uninvited tea lynch. I was in my close friend's wedding. As his bride-to-be was walking up the aisle, she faceplanted. It was an outdoor wedding, so she got dirt grass stains all over her. Very awkward, but she played to really cool and didn't cry. Respect. I would have run away crying. I had one job. At my cousin's wedding, her boss got wasted and told a story about her nephew watching pee in a hotel on a family trip. It came out of nowhere and everyone was sufficiently confused and uncomfortable. I was young and someone had made the mistake of serving me wine, so I just laughed and laughed in the otherwise silent room. They had to turn off the mic and then just close the speeches for the rest of the night. At this point the best man should have taken the mic and said there should be a breathalyzer required to turn this thing on before continuing into his toast. So I was at my brother-in-law's wedding. My wife, groom's sister, was in the wedding party, so I sat with her family. Her parents get up on the stage to say their speech. Father-in-law steps up to the mic and says, "Thanks everyone for coming out," and sits back down beside me. There is a horrible awkward silence in the room. Everyone was expecting a long speech, and the MC had just sat down and taken a big drink. In the silence he leans over to me and says, "What? If you don't have anything nice to say?" Apparently he doesn't like his new daughter-in-law very much. At our wedding, wife's best friend grabs the mic to give a tipsy toast. After some nice comments about how happy she is for my wife, she proceeds to chronicle some of my wife's dating past. She includes a story about one very well-endowed Irish guy my wife dated. Turns out, my wife's friend misunderstood what the Irish curse really is. When my cousin got married, most of the close family knew that the groom had been caught cheating multiple times in the past, but the majority of the people attending did not. During a small speech discussing the marriage counseling he had done with the couple, the priest went on a long rant about the groom's past infidelity and how he was confident it would not happen again. Given how few people in the church knew about the issues, it became very tense. A friend was getting married, and the best man decided that in his toast he would try to compliment how beautiful the bride was. He ended up saying it took a team of bridesmaids and scientists to get her looking like that. Nice try, really awkward. A best man went into a discussion of specific high school wrestling moves and then commented on the instability of the bride and groom's relationship. Later, a bridesmaid mentioned to him that his speech was pretty awful. He thought the regular applause was an entertained audience. Nope, that was them encouraging him to be done. At my cousin's wedding this summer, the priest was giving his spiel and started to tell a story about my cousin's brother, Dale. My cousin doesn't have a brother and there is nobody in our family named Dale. TLDR. Who the frick is Dale? Only the priest can see Dale. Dale tells the priest to burn things. During the ceremony, one of the guests yelled out, "Groom, and I did so many drugs in college." It fell silent and my dad laughed for 5 minutes straight afterwards. Okay, honestly that's just funny as crap. My cousin was supposed to get married 3 months before us, but wound up having her wedding 9 months after us instead, postponing it a full year. My dad and my aunt, his sister, are not close. So I only got a piece of the story secondhand, that there were issues with the groom and they were worked out somehow. During their reception, the best man starts his toast talking about how wonderful and amazing the bride, my cousin, is, and how lucky the groom, the douche, is to have her. He then goes on to detail the drug use and infidelity that caused them to postpone a year earlier, summing up that thank goodness cousin stood by douche through those hard times. Those days are over now. My poor, sweet, shy cousin. Sadly it does not end well. Fast forward about 4 years and she and their 2 children moved back in with my aunt. Douche had sold off all the baby supplies. They had a newborn, so he could buy drugs. Oh my. At my father's wedding to his new wife, he mistakenly called his bride by his ex-wife's, my mother's, name during his speech to her. Take the Rachel. At my wedding my gay friend from high school got super drunk and stepped up to the mic. It was a low-key weekend. It took everyone about a minute to realize he was slowly professing his love to me. My sister had to walk him off the stage. This speech was literally going nowhere other than to tell me he loved me. Not that there is anything wrong with that, but to my defense I was currently occupied marrying my wife. Later in the night he tried to tell me I ruined his day by not having him in the wedding. We hadn't really hung out in the last 2 years but more a wedding logistics issue. I told him his options were to have my brother walk him back to the room or I'd knock him out for trying to get in my face at my wedding. We chalked it all off to booze and emotions and are still good friends, but it was one of the best awkwardest moments anyone has ever experienced. I don't care if someone is gay or straight. There is a lot wrong with confessing your love for the groom in the middle of his wedding. My entire wedding was a painful incident. Groom was drunk and thought we were rehearsing for some reason. Proceeded to act like an butt and make jokes throughout the whole thing. After we were pronounced man and wife, he and all of his drunken groomsmen dogpiled me. Every sober person in attendance was horrified and several people told me I should cut my losses and plan the divorce. It was awful. Someone was kind enough to take a picture so I could remember the moment. There is a tradition in some circles where the best man's speech roasts the groom. A well done roast follows a cycle of build him up and knock him down. But I was at a wedding where the best man just basically insulted the groom for 10-15 minutes. After the first couple minutes, The discomfort in the audience was palpable. The laughs turned into polite chuckles and then into just silence. To make things worse, he had printed out his speech using a ridiculously tiny font and kept losing his place. By the time the fourth or fifth pause came around, someone actually shouted out, "Just say cheers and shut up already." But sadly the speech continued. I found out later that the groom was so pissed off by the whole thing that he didn't speak to the best man for several months after that. I've told this one before, but here you are. A couple years into one of my more serious relationships, my so and I were invited to his cousin's wedding, where a lot of both sides of his family would be, along with a few of our close friends. It was quite a nice ceremony, and afterwards we were conversing with the bride's stepdad. I was quietly nodding my head listening to my so and him talk, until I hear, "You know, insert X's name here, you're the one who should have married insert bride's name." I stand there, trying to close my mouth, and looking at this very drunk man telling my boyfriend to marrying his first cousin. Not only was this something I listened to once, but was loudly announced during his speech to the bride and groom. After all the speeches and dancing, the bride ended up getting pee drunk, being 5 months pregnant at the time, and telling everyone around who was not up and dancing to dance. Dance. It's my freaking wedding. Just lovely. They must be from a rural area. Drunk moms. Oh lordy, all the drunk moms. They all feel the need to grab the mic and hiccup and stumble over their words while their children look on in horror. I told my mum she's not allowed a sip till after the speeches are done. My brother was my best man and told a very touching story about when I was 16 and lied and cheated to skip baseball practice to instead hang out with my girlfriend on the bleachers. I met my wife when I was 18. Thanks, bro. Funny wedding 2 years ago. The minister took the opportunity to make a 45-minute sermon, said amen at times. He stressed over and over again that the bride will never have a will of her own again. She was just a rib to the man she was not bound to. Father of the bride then had his speech. He gave a long-winded telling of the disgruntled ex-co-worker's shooting spree in the hospital. He told about his wife locking the door and hiding. He gave coroner's reports of where people were shot and how one person that had been shot in the head had played possum, then called the police. The father of the bride wasn't even there, but this shootout seemed to be the best thing that ever happened to him. He just showed way too much enthusiasm. Then to finish, he mentioned that the groom was the extra security hired after the incident and met his phlebotomist daughter. Then the testimonials began. Everyone shared stories about how hard the groom tried, but he was stupid. The stories of the bride were always about her eating problem. Can you believe she ate the whole pie at 6 years old? However, the bulk was, "It will get worse. Just get stronger with Jesus." Nobody shared stories of growing together and the adventure of raising a family. Nope. None of that. Life is over as you do your duty. It was like a eulogy. I think we just found the answer to the question of why people bug newlyweds to hurry and have kids. At my sister's best friend's wedding, the parents of the bride got up and did a lovely short speech, welcoming the groom into their family. And then the groom's parents stood up and talked for nearly 15 minutes about how awesome their son is, never once mentioning his new wife or the wedding or anything. It was super awkward. This was at my cousin's wedding. My cousin and his buddy had a pact, if you will. They would be each other's best men. Okay, all well and good. Only catch is during their toast they had to moon the reception at the end of the speech. So back to cousin's wedding. He is giving his speech. Yada yada, known this guy forever. Then at the very end he is about to pass the mic back. Oh wait, almost forgot, sets the mic down. Turns around, stands on a chair and moons the wedding reception. Bride's family promptly left. I think my cousin forgot all about that because he looked blindsided. Luckily my side of the family found it hilarious. I have several from my sister's wedding. Nothing huge, just little things said by my brother-in-law's stepmom. 1. As my sister was putting her dress on, stepmom looks at her and says, "Does that even fit?" Incredibly rude, especially since it was a form-fitting dress. My sister looked very nice in it. 2. It was an outdoor wedding, and as such weather is always a concern. While we were setting up, it started, barely, sprinkling. It looked brief, so we didn't want to tell my sister lest she start to worry. Then comes stepmom to save the day. "It's freaking pouring out, thanks, Cherry." The rest of the night she was just a general wet blanket. and I think they left early. My sister had a great wedding though, despite her. At my cousin's wedding, some elderly relative of theirs gave a speech against shacking up. I guess she was oblivious to the fact that my cousin and her new husband had been living together for a year and that her brother was unmarried with a kid on the way. It was a very awkward 8 minuets. My Phil, most socially awkward and inappropriate person I have ever met, decided to give a speech randomly at his daughter's wedding. It was a very casual wedding and no one was giving speeches or toasts or anything. My sister-in-law was marrying a guy named Jameson, and this pretty much sums up his speech. Did you ever hear about how Jameson got his name? Well, his parents named him Jay and were so happy to have a son that everywhere they went they said, "This is Jay, my son. This is Jay, my son," which eventually got shortened to the name Jameson and cue the crickets. He then asked if Jameson's dad wanted to give a speech. It was totally random, out of place, and obviously awkward. He basically interrupted an entire party to tell everyone his lame joke. I was at a wedding this summer, and the best man started his speech by declaring that he didn't prepare anything because he wanted to speak from the heart. He talked for 5 minutes about how both his mother and groom's mother were dead, just going on and on about it. At the end of the speech, someone at the reception audibly said he should have prepared something, which was met with a not so silent wave of agreement. The last wedding I attended, as a favor for a friend, was all kinds of weird. First of all, the wedding party walked down the aisle to a waltz in a minor key. Then, the groom started mouthing gibberish during the bride's vows, causing her to mess up and have to start over again. The pastor was like, "Shall we try this again?" The groom found this hilarious. Later, at the reception, the groomsmen each tried to outsuck each other with their speeches. One of them actually said, "The groom isn't the most exciting guy in the world, but if you're looking for someone to hang out with and do nothing all day, he's your man." The best man took the cake, though, with accusing the bride of stealing his best friend from him. The cherry on top was a complete lack of dancing at the reception, except for the groom and groomsmen all going crazy when Wild Wild West by Will Smith came on. They danced on each other, each of them rapping the entire song, and sat down immediately after it was over. TLDR, depressing music. Groom pranks bride, insulting the groom and bride in speeches. White guy love fest to Wild Wild West. The only awkward one I've experienced was at my sister's wedding, where I was her maid of honor. The best man was the groom's brother, who had lived with them and a few other roommates at one point. He proceeded to tell some sort of odd, rambling story about my sister nagging his brother, complete with a me voice to represent her. It was meant to be joking, but it just fell pretty flat and seemed kinda mean, even if it wasn't meant that way. I felt bad, so I dropped a few of my, much more appropriate, jokes because I thought he'd done more than enough damage. The mother of the groom stood up with the single women and positioned herself directly behind the bride. She caught the bouquet. Her husband had died 6 months earlier. I went to 2 family weddings in the space of 6 months, both Ukrainian Orthodox. They had the same priest at both weddings, and he gave the exact same 45-minute sermon at both weddings. For the most part, the Orthodox churches vary by the book. I wouldn't be surprised if it was the exact same words for every single wedding. My sister and her hubby got married almost 6 years ago. The best man was hubby's cousin. BM was so drunk high that he could barely speak, let alone read the speech that he had written. He stood, swaying for 10 minutes before his brother took him outside, where he promptly threw up and passed out in the parking lot. My sister-in-law is batshit crazy. Let me start there and I'll get to the wedding part. It started several months before, when my husband proposed. It coincidentally was also his sister's birthday. She wound up coming up to our house and staying over that same evening, wanting to go out to the bar my husband frequented because she wanted to frick one, or a couple, who knows, of his friends, rather than us going out to celebrate our engagement. It turned into a birthday party. A few weeks later, hurricane came and she and her new third in a month boyfriend and one of her kids stayed at our house for over a week. At this point I think she decided she was entitled to stay whenever she liked. Fast forward again to 2 days before the wedding. She calls my husband wanting us to let her stay at our house during our honeymoon so she could have a free place to frick her boyfriend since she spent all her money on his plane ticket and couldn't afford a hotel. We didn't even invite him, it was a tiny, immediate family only wedding. Without asking, she flew him down and decided it was our responsibility to house her for the wedding, even though the wedding was 3 hours away from our house, on the beach. When husband told her frick no strangers are staying in our house with our stuff for a week while we aren't there, and our house isn't a free fuck, but she went ballistic. She ranted that she was going to crash our wedding anyway and frick up the ceremony, since what were we gonna do about it since it was on a public beach. She harassed us for 2 days via text. She told me I was a whale in a wedding dress the night before my wedding. She told my husband's father, her stepdad, lies about my husband while my Phil was on his deathbed. She calls my husband crying at Christmas, and he now just laughs. She apologized again at our nephew's wedding, but frick that crazy C. Serious, Redditors who married someone significantly higher or lower in education level. How has it affected your relationship? Were there any unforeseen consequences? My GF has a master's, a PhD, and is an associate professor at a university. I don't have a bachelor's. She considers me to be the smart one in the relationship. To be sure, I have much better general knowledge and technical abilities, but dang, she's smart. There is one flaw she has, however. She uses Google Italy a lot for her research. To do this, she opens Chrome, types Google into the bar at the top. When google.com appears, she types Google Italy into the search field. Then she does her search. So maybe I am the smart one. I have kinda thought that people are smart in their own way. Academically, common sense, street smarts, etc. You spend X amount of time on this planet, so I guess you hone some set of skills that are appreciated by others. I am completing my second degree. My wife didn't finish high school. She is actually quite intelligent but was raised in a family where educating girls was seen as pointless. It becomes a problem when she plays damsel in distress for me to rescue her, which was how she was raised. I gently remind her of all she has achieved in her life without formal education. It's pretty good most of the time. I married a moron. I tried really hard to convince myself that she wasn't just a flaming idiot. It made things really difficult. We couldn't hold deep conversations. She wouldn't understand a concept, so I'd have to explain it to her. Then she'd argue with me about the crap she literally knew nothing about 15 minutes ago. She refused to believe in carbon dating. I'm divorced now. I barely graduated high school. My wife has a double major. I make 95% of the income and she raises our kids. I overcompensate by listening to non-fiction audiobooks at work all day. I have over 300 under my belt, but had to Google a few words in this post to make sure I spelled them right. My kids are super smart. They will know how to read and write better than me by the time they're 8. Marriage has its ups and downs but has lasted 10 years so far and seems to be on track for lasting another 18 at least, I hope. My wife is a doctor, MD, in her 3rd year of residency. I have a bachelor's degree that is basically an expensive paperweight. She's very driven and she has high expectations for me and my career. Not like I won't love you if you don't make a lot of money expectations, but we both know that I can do better than how I'm doing now and she pushes me to fulfill my potential. I believe in you, man. My husband has a PhD in computer science. I had an associate degree of nursing up until I completed my BSN last winter. It's never been a problem with us. I was a stay-at-home mom with a high school degree for a while and he was happy with that. However, when I expressed interest in school and he was a big supporter and was a big motivator for me, it taught me statistics when I just couldn't get it. I couldn't have done it without him. As far as day-to-day things, we just have different interests. He's highly intelligent and is all science, politics, etc, and I'm more of a people or TMZ kind of girl, or what I call useless knowledge things. But we listen to each other and have been married for 16 years now and going strong. I'm the one with more education. It's a little embarrassing because she's obviously so much smarter than I am. If she chose to do what I do, she would do it better. But she was smart enough to do something that made her happy instead. Only real consequence has been that the situation has led both of us to respect each other deeply. My parents worked that way. My mother finished college with a master's in finance while my dad dropped out to take care of my older brother while my mom went to college. My dad was clearly much smarter than my mom, but he dropped out so that she could become the first in her family to graduate college. I just started my PhD specializing in the privacy and security realm of software engineering computer science. My wife is in her second year of taking night classes to get her BAA. I can honestly say that I haven't seen much in the way of negative consequences. She is extremely driven and ambitious, which is more than I can say about most of my peers. We still have very deep and meaningful conversations. I actually find that most of the people who are at the PhD level just want to sound smart and build their ego further. It is really nice to come home to someone who is real about things. Wouldn't change a thing. This is dead on. If you want to be bored, go to a PhD student mixer. Everyone gives their thesis elevator speech and then fills the time with what seem to be pre-scripted conversation pieces about intellectual topics extracted from NPR or The New Yorker. No real consequence. He's so much freaking smarter than I am, though. It's shameful. It's unreal how obscenely intelligent he is. I don't even know why he settled with me instead of someone up to his par. I may not be anywhere near as smart, but I know he loves me deeply. He might not value intelligence like you value it. That is, you're measuring the worth of a person and their corresponding sexual attractive value on intelligence. And maybe he doesn't see intelligence that way. I guess what I'm trying to say is maybe he wonders why the heck someone so hot would marry him. Maybe he thinks you're out of his league. I'm in the middle of my master's and my so got kicked out of college. Academic suspension. His first undergrad semester. So far, so good. We both work, share income and debts, etc. The missus has her master's in psychology and works as a clinical psych. I dropped out in year 11 and work as a laborer installing stone bench tops. Hasn't really affected us. She's not necessarily smarter than me, she's just much more educated. I am a high school dropout. My wife has her bachelor's in social work. Things work pretty great. She takes care of our son about 80% of the time while I'm at work. I make about 88% of the income. Intellectually we don't really notice any disparity. We are just average, boring, married people. I am a few weeks away from getting my PhD in a STEM field and my husband is a mechanic. He did go to a year of tech school after HS, but no associate's degree or anything. Our relationship is wonderful. He is incredibly intelligent, and not just in a common sense way, like most people assume, and our different types of knowledge complements each other. We are very similar in our drive to be the best in our fields and of course have lots of similarities otherwise. It doesn't really affect our relationship. BC we met my first semester of college, so he knew what my goals were and I his. The hardest part is that people have no concept of what a mechanic does, or think he should fix anything they broke, which he can, but that's not the point. Congrats on being so close to getting that PhD. My better half wasn't able to complete high school due to a leukemia diagnosis. She also has cognitive issue due to the chemotherapy. I have a lot of one bachelor's that indicates a double major of math and electrical engineering with a minor in physics and a master's degree in electrical engineering. I've yet to have any issues other than her forgetfulness, which we've sort of turned into a funny thing. It's like, me. Why did you leave the meat out? I left the meat out. Well, if you didn't like it then you could have just told me. Then I give her a big hug and we laugh about it. She's incredibly intelligent regardless of anything else and I love her more than life itself. Or, you guys sound great. I only ever finished high school. My wife had a PhD. It's a long story, but in the beginning we were fine. I supported her all the way through her various degrees right up until her doctorate by working to keep the both of us fed housed. She was only on a student income at the time. I figured that she had the smarts. And even though I was working in a dead-end job I hated, at least one of us was earning money, and I felt that she came first, as any husband should feel about their wife. I did feel as though her family looked down on me, as much as she told me they didn't. After she graduated we decided to expand our friendship sphere, i.e., we wanted more friends to hang out with, as a lot of our own had moved away and had kids. We both started going to meet up groups that aligned to our own interests. It was through that she met some English guy who had published some books on socioeconomics and worked as her advisor for some government housing project. I guess they hit it off because a few months later I inadvertently came across some of her emails she had been exchanging with him. And keeping with the theme of educational levels, there were some topics that academics would find enthralling, but also some not so much ahem. Long story short, because it is a long story, I confronted her. She left me. This was a while ago now, and the grapevine tells me they're getting married. Wife has a PhD in educational psychology and a master's in special education. She's dean of a college of arts and sciences. And she's foxy. I, on the other hand, am a fat, ugly, stupid actor with a get. We've been together almost 15 years, because I make her laugh. We didn't marry, but I spent 25 years of my life with a woman I met when we were 17. We had both finished school and were working UK, and the first few years were great. We had fun, went out, had a big group of friends, went on sun holidays, etc. In my mid-20s I decided to go back and complete my education. I was always a big reader. She never read anything other than gossip magazines. I ended up with a higher education qualification in English, started to write a lot, and gradually began moving in different circles and enjoying all forms of culture, none of which interested her. Just to point out that I'm not blaming anyone here, only pointing out how these things can happen almost accidentally. We stayed together for a few more years, but our 17 years old shared interests simply weren't there any longer. We had a child together, and by the time she was 8 our different parenting styles and wishes were really apparent. I wanted to get her the best possible education, took her to galleries and the theater, and generally had a clear vision of how I wanted her to grow up, but I didn't feel her mother shared the same aspirations. This difference finally drove us apart, and I left with a solid promise to myself that I would continue to play as much a part in my daughter's life as I could have done had I stayed living with them. I only moved a couple of miles away and did exactly that. We developed a very special father-daughter relationship. We continued cultural pursuits, particularly the theater, discussed books, and went on many holidays, including a long road trip around Europe visiting Paris and Barcelona. She's 18 now and has just started university studying for a degree in English literature. I am incredibly proud of her. I firmly believe, in fact I know, that splitting with her mother has helped in her development. Is she single? I have one, soon to be two, masters. My husband never went to school, was raised shittily overseas, in a terrible situation. As I finish my thesis, sometimes I feel like he can be a bit unyielding in acknowledging that grad school is hard. He's successful in his field and quite smart, where I am more capable in navigating bureaucracy and playing the game. So I can't share all of my academic woes with him, but that's true of any disconnect. He's been supportive in his own ways, and I'm grateful. Otherwise, we earn similarly, and I expect to get a full-time job after graduation and let him dial back a bit and screw around, house husband style. My wife is a doctor while I failed out of sophomore year of college. It doesn't really impact our lives much, though occasionally she'll ask me a really stupid question and I just respond with, "How are you a doctor?" A true story. She once called me to ask me what is 8 plus 3. I responded, "You called me on your cell phone. Use the calculator app." Also, "How are you a doctor?" Also 11 inches. That last bit sounded like an Archer phone call. My husband is technically smarter than me, but when it comes to education level, well, he left school in the 4th grade. His mom began homeschooling him for 1 year but never turned anything in, and after the 4th grade just stopped. Our first year together he went back and got his GED, which I am incredibly proud of him for, but before that it was so hard when we had to do paperwork. He got turned down from job after job. We were struggling. Even now he's not shy about telling people, and it has hurt us. It's hard, but I know he's not stupid at all. Heck, he's my tutor for my physics classes, and he spends his free time building computers. But people judge him because of his education level, not by his intelligence. I am in my 2nd year of law school. My husband is a community college dropout. We can't discuss politics because 3 sentences into the conversation I want to smack him. But in everything else we are pretty even. He can fix a car with little to no mental effort. I am the computer and paperwork person in our relationship. He's really pretty, solid 11. I am a 7. Our kids are both super intelligent, though one has behavioral issues. They both have been fast-tracked for gifted educational programs. Our 5-year-old is reading and doing math. Our 2-year-old is reading small words and can count to almost 50. So he has a hard time thinking what homework is going to be like in the near future, and if I cook, he cleans. We keep it pretty even for the most part and it works well. I have come to accept that I will never be able to discuss political things, and he has come to accept I will never understand cars or mechanical things. But we both laugh at fart jokes. It probably doesn't help that law school teaches you to understand issues from every angle and, in my experience, drains you of any passion regarding most political topics. I find it hard to talk politics with anyone at this point. Together for 31 years, married for 26. My wife barely scraped through high school. I have a grad degree in engineering and undergrads in Comp Sci and engineering and work in applied research. She's practical. I'm a space cadet. It's zero issue for us. Our lifestyles and interests are very close. I don't really give a crap that she has no idea what a Fourier transform is or the cool things you can do with them. It was a little different with our 2 kids. I was harder about pushing the importance of an advanced degree than my wife. We completely funded their rights. It all worked out. My mom never graduated high school. My dad has his master's degree in mechanics. My mom has been working at the same place, locksmith gift store, since she was 16, and when it came time for the owner to retire, she bought the shop at the age of 35. A few months and she needed help 1 day a week, so my dad asked his boss if he could have the 1 day off. Boss said no, so he quit on the spot and became a locksmith with my mom. 12 years later they are one of the most successful locksmith shops in town. I have a degree in computer science and a passion for physics and engineering, working as a software engineer. My fiancée is working on her childcare certification in a traineeship, so there's definitely a big gap in education level. She has dyslexia, so she really struggles with reading, writing and maths. This of course made school really hard for her and makes her TAFE work quite difficult. But if you actually get her in a scenario where her dyslexia isn't holding her back, she's quite intelligent. She learns processes quickly and has decent problem solving skills. She just doesn't have the ability to perform in an academic setting, so she doesn't have the knowledge. There's only really 3 ways it's affected our relationship. 1. She has self-confidence issues after being called an idiot through all of high school. It's kinda sad, so it just means I'm extra careful with what I say to her and try to boost her confidence when I can. 2. Either me or her mum proofread and help with her TAFE work. No big deal though. 3. I earn way more than her. Also doesn't matter to me. TL. DR. Fiancé is uneducated and dyslexic. Still gonna marry her. You are doing exactly the right thing as a fiancé. I'm certain she appreciates everything you do. My husband and I have a disparity. He has an associate's. I am almost done with my master's. We only really have 2 points of contention. He could be making more money than he is now if he had finished out the bachelor's, and he is ashamed of his lack of education because he sees it as a failure. He has been pitifully chipping away at the same degree for 11 years and he still has almost a year to go because he has dropped out of or failed so many classes. I don't see it as a failure, though it would be nice if he was bringing in that extra dough. However, he is currently supporting me while I full-time study, and even after I graduate, he'll still make more money than me since he has 10+ years more experience in his field than I will mine. To be a fair and supportive spouse, I have no problems being the full-time worker if he ever decides he wants to go back and finish his bachelor's out. I would be proud of him if he did, and I know it would be a weight off his mind. I am currently completing a PhD and have a bachelor and 2 master's degrees under my belt, microbiology and epidemiology. My boyfriend of 2 years works as a mover and handyman with some years of college under his belt, and I love him dearly. As others have mentioned, we are both intelligent people, but we just pursue different careers. He loves what he does, and I love what I do. It's also great to learn how to be more handy and hands-on, as I couldn't repair anything around the house if my life depended on it. I didn't marry one, but sure have dated a few. I have a master's degree and I'm a teacher. I'm no astrophysicist, but yes, I'm educated. I dated a carpenter for 2 years, who was quite smart in terms of recent world history, only 20th century and solving problems, but very uncultured. Sweetest guy though, and totally good at heart. I also dated a farmer, who was a high school dropout and was quite low in the academic department, but was incredibly hardworking and had amazing practical knowledge. I'm a bookworm creative social type, but I learned a crap load about how to think from these two guys. My wife earned her master's in social work at age 24. I'm a CVICU nurse, only an associate's degree under my belt. Like many of the answers here, my wife is definitely smarter than I am when it comes to social work. Critical care is my thing. I'm sure I outdo my wife in that field. In general though, there isn't a huge intellectual disparity. The wife is an MD, practicing trauma surgeon, has 2 master's degrees and 2 bachelors. I muddled my way through a few years of JC and haven't worked in nearly 8 years. It's quite excellent. People who have a lot of demands on them need that support character in their life. That's me for her. I do all the stuff that she can't. She makes the money. We've gotten crap from traditional family types about how I should contribute to the family. Every time my argument is the same. If I were a woman, would there be any issue with the arrangement? And thus far, that shuts them up. My wife has the potential to make at least 10 times what I could, and loves her job. Why is it wrong simply because the gender role is reversed? The answer is yes to all the questions. I am a great cook when I cook. I do all the laundry. I clean the house. I am the main caretaker of our only child. I have coffee ready in the morning, make sure she always had gas in the car, and take care of all the finances. My wife mocked me because I believed in dinosaurs. She said those bones were fakes buried by Jesus to test our faith. She's no longer my wife. My wife is a neuroscientist and I'm a salesman for refurbished vacuums that barely work. Well, sort of a salesman. I don't really even get to actually sell the vacuum to the customer. I only get to tell them what it does. It actually kinda sucks. I have a master's degree. My husband is a trade school dropout. I never think of his education. It doesn't affect us at all. He's done pretty well for himself. He actually makes about 10k more a year. He's actually very smart. I genuinely believe he's smarter than me. My fiance sells cell phones, and he didn't go to college. He makes twice what I do. I am a licensed plumber, certified to install gas tight, a professional tile layer, a pharmacy technician, and a head chef with a bachelor's in business administration with a focus in hospitality. People do judge me by picking on me, saying I picked a dumb one that didn't even go to college. Well, look at me. I went to college and I'm in debt because of it and pulling $38k a year. Woo fricking who. He makes $60k in a bad year and all he does is sit at a desk and wait for someone to walk up and say, hey, I want to buy something. Just a minor point of contention. On average in these posts, there are more educated women dating married to men of lower education levels and being content with it. I see significantly less of the inverse, let alone those that ended well. I'm a doctor. My boyfriend is a hairdresser. We've been together for 8 years now, and met when I was still a student. I've got 2 degrees, and he left school at 16 with a few GCSEs. I can't say it's ever been an issue between us, but I think people are a bit surprised and don't always know what to say on introductions, especially when introducing him to other doctors. Although on paper I'm more educated, he's been working and training in his field since he left school, so is very skilled for his age, 28. If anything, I think our different backgrounds work well together. I could never be with another medic and be in that bubble. I think having different backgrounds actually increases the variety of people and the circles that we mix in. I know there have been a few people, doctors, my dad, who have looked down on him because they see him as just a hairdresser, and that really pisses me off. In fact, even though I'm a doctor and have been qualified for a couple of years now, he earns more than me. He's just taken on a very senior international role, teaching in hairdressing academies across the world. And as things are going with junior doctors and the NHS in the UK, it looks like I'm about to get a pay cut, so he'll be earning way more than me. So just because there's a difference on paper, doesn't mean there's a difference in skill or potential. I once dated a primary school teacher and she eventually broke up with me because she didn't consider me to be smart enough for her. Now I'm with an architect and she thinks I'm significantly smarter than her. I have a college degree, but both those women have master's degrees, plus other significant certifications. I've also dated a doctor and a cop. Those women also thought I was rather intelligent. Really, I think they just admired my intense interest in history. I don't know if education levels can really be a predictor for compatibility of any kind at all. Wife is a doctor. I drive a taxi. It hasn't really affected anything, other than that she obviously pays for more than me. We have a joint account that we put a percentage of our paychecks in and pay for everything. She's book smart. I'm street smart. As in I know the names of many streets. His first language is not English while mine is. He counts, thinks, dreams in his first language. His advanced English vocabulary is limited and he will sometimes use big words incorrectly. I think it's cute and will correct him and he will use it correctly the next time. I like that my expanded vocab is rubbing off on him. He has started using bigger words that are everyday and not a big deal for me. For example, I use the word the picked often and he started saying it. He is intelligent in specific areas, whereas my liberal arts education and experience as a political reporter has provided me broad knowledge of the world and an ability to be a critical thinker. He has little knowledge of history, science, math, and I find that it impedes one area of our relationship: humor. He's slow to get my geeky jokes, wit and puns because he doesn't know the words. That's the only part of relationship that I wish was stronger, but I have friends that keep me laughing all the time. I acknowledged this aspect very early in our relationship and it's something that I am willing to accept. He's emotionally intelligent, extremely in tune with the male-female relationship dynamic, and he has exceeded my expectations in the relationship. About the humor, he eventually recognized a deficit. We were on vacation and at times I would be on social media laughing at stuff. He cried at dinner saying, "I can't make you laugh the way your friends do." It was the sweetest thing. It showed me that he's 1. A bit insecure and 2. Cares about making me happy. It is what it is. I don't need to be entertained by my significant other. We understand each other on a deep level. He really gets who I am and vice versa. At the end of the day, the unspoken action is love. The action is what our relationship is built upon. We need few words to show and experience love. Has anyone ever been to a wedding where someone objected? Tell us the story. Not exactly an objection, but I worked as a photographer at a wedding chapel on the Vegas Strip. We had a young Chinese couple come in with their friends and get married. The minister did his normal speech, but when it came down to the vows I could tell something was wrong. The groom kept putting the ring on the bride's finger and taking it off hesitantly. This went on for a few uncomfortable minutes. At one point the groom asked the bride if there was someone else and she nodded her head. After a couple more awkward moments, the minister explained that if he did not pronounce them man and wife it wouldn't be legal. They decided not to get married. Their friends still bought the DVD though. That was one of my favorite moments working there. Yep. Lots of lawyers. It was a joke between the groomsmen. They all said it in unison. Everyone laughed, except the bride and her parents. Good times. At one wedding, the bride's mother stood up and objected. She said, "I love you, groom, and I don't want anyone else as a son-in-law. But my daughter is exactly like me, and I wouldn't be able to let this wedding continue if I didn't warn you about the mess we make out of the lives of people we love. Make sure you want this," then sat back down. When I read the first part of your comment, I was convinced the bride's mother was going to stand up and make a play for the groom. When I was about 15, I was at my uncle's wedding. When they asked if anyone objected, my dad slipped ice down the back of my shirt. I proceeded to jump up startled and everyone turned to me in shock. I sit back down without saying a word and my dad laughed like a hyena. Everyone was very confused. I'm in love with your dad. I've seen a mother-in-law at a wedding get hammered on Jack Daniels and proceed to call the bride a dirty W right before the ceremony started. Then have to be escorted out after she jumped up and started yelling when they asked if anyone objected. Now that was a freaking great wedding. Jack Daniels and a wedding. Always a nice mix. I was a date for a wedding where the bride and groom got into a huge fight during the reception and threw their wedding rings at each other in the parking lot. They didn't stay married for very long. My grandpa used to call those people two south poles like on a magnet. You can shove them together and make them touch each other for brief periods of time, but they'll never become one. Stupid people think they can win at weddings by getting through it. Ha, that's just the starting line. My boyfriend's sister got married in a boat that was cruising down the Intracoastal Waterway in South Florida. During the vows, someone from a nearby unrelated boat shouted up, "Don't do it. It's a mistake," to where we all were on the top deck. Fortunately, everyone just laughed after a brief moment of suspecting the groom was involved, because it was exactly the sort of prank he'd pull. I was about 17 at my uncle Calvin's wedding when the pastor said, "Does anyone have any reason why these two should not be wed?" A rather large unattractive woman stood up and said, "Wonder you so stupid. You know I was with Calvin last night." Then she left while everyone is picking up their jaws from the ground. The pastor tried to brush it off as nonsense and continue, but my brother and I were about to explode from holding in our laughs. I heard a squeak from him and I lost it. Full on hard laughter until my dad looked at us down the aisle with the death stare. Most awkward situation I've ever been in. I can hear this woman saying it in a deep southern accent. During the groom's speech at a wedding I attended, he told his new wife how much he loved her, but unfortunately called her by his ex-girlfriend's name. There was a moment's silence before he corrected himself, then laughter, horrified looks depending on how drunk related to the bride you were. They are still happily married. A little prehistory. My stepdad used to be in a mock gun fighting group and had prop guns that fired blanks. They did a number of shows around the city and took all the safety precautions. My mom's wedding was a Western style wedding. My stepdad was dressed as a cowboy, as was his best man. When it came time to ask if anyone had any objections, one of the other gunfight group members stood up and proclaimed that he had seen her first. Before he could go any further, the best man shot him with his prop gun, thus resulting in a short-lived gunfight around the assembly. The groom's side prevailed and the wedding continued as planned. I was one of maybe 10 people that knew this was even going to happen, so it was pretty entertaining to see the reactions from the rest of the assembly. This is approximately the neatest theme and twist I could ever hope to add to a wedding. After all, the whole point of having a wedding is to entertain and satisfy your loved ones while making your union unique and personal. They done did it. At my sister's wedding, my brother objected and said he was a piece of crap and she deserves better, which was true. Fun wedding. I went to my step-aunt's wedding, ex-stepmom's sister, a few years ago, and her fiancé was a cool stoner dude. Bodine, from Trinidad, emigrated to Canada, and she was a Scottish heritage white Catholic girl, so obviously, the families were kinda iffy. Anyways, it gets to this lax ceremony wherein the bride flew in from a seaplane to the beach. Father was a pilot. It was pretty cool, and the vows are being done. So Bodine's father stands up at the objection part, completely hammered, and everyone is frozen. His wife is absolutely mortified, and then he just smiles and yells, "Nah, just kidding," and sits back down, laughing. Bride and groom thought it was hilarious, but everyone else was awkward for the rest of the ceremony. I can hear his voice in my head. What a funny guy. I used to shoot wedding videos with Butthole Studios. Note used to, and there was a wedding where we drove nearly 80 miles from the studio, San Francisco to be exact, and the bride's mom objects. I turned my camera to her to catch the sweet action only to hear her say she slept with the groom once. The wedding didn't continue, and part of our policy in the contract, once we are there they have to pay in full even if there is an objection. If you had a copy of the tape you'd have the top comment. Everyone objected to my brother's wedding, so much so people outright refused to go to the wedding. It lasted 4 weeks. If someone told me a wedding I was invited to was going to take 4 weeks to finish, I'd RSVP no as well. There was a really great drama a few years ago from a bride that this happened to. If I remember correctly, her best friend, maid of honor, objected because she had been sleeping with the groom. The bride then vomited everywhere and the bride's father ran up and punched out the groom. Then all the guests left awkwardly. It was one of the best dramas I've ever seen. I tried searching for it but had no luck. When I saw it was right around the time all the ex-Dig users came to Reddit, so someone asked for the best dramas newer redditors had missed, and this was one of them. I'm a woman who vomited on the altar of my own wedding because my maid of honor confessed that she was sleeping with my fiancé. AMA. Catered a wedding where someone should have objected but didn't. After the ceremony, the mother of the bride caught the groom making out with one of the groomsmen. A general freakout followed. You may now kiss the bride. It wasn't an objection during the ceremony, but when I went to the wedding of a girl I dated several years ago, her dad approached me during the reception after several drinks and told me that he wished he had married me instead. I recommended that he keep that to himself. Not sure if I'd want to go to the wedding of an ex. I guess it depends on how the friendship developed afterward, but I feel like that would usually be a form of self-torture. At my dad's wedding, my little brother dropped to his knees and grabbed our dad's leg and shouted, "I object." The pastor made a joke about it later. He was like 5 or 6 when that happened. That's a pretty young pastor. Just thought that everyone might like to know, in case they didn't already, that the request for any objections during a wedding ceremony isn't actually there for heartbroken exes or disgruntled relatives. It's supposed to be an actual inquiry as to whether or not anyone knows of any legal reasons why the bride or groom cannot marry, such as an incomplete divorce, a newlywed being underage, a wife in the attic, etc. Point in case in point, Jane Eyre. Just got back from cousin's wedding today. That never happened. She locked herself in her hotel room and hyperventilated. Tried telling her mom that she needed an ambulance, but her mom thought just jitters. Mom refused the ambulance and told her to get the dress on. Then she screamed and threw a tantrum. Told her mom they have been fighting a lot, some of it physical. There was no music or anything with the bridesmaid running down the aisle either. Happened about 2 hours before the ceremony was to start. They simply told people as they arrived that the wedding was cancelled, but we were all welcome to head over to the reception at 3 for a party. I bailed. I hope I have a receipt for this stupid punch bowl I got as a gift. All the good gifts were taken. Oh wow, well I'm glad your cousin got out of it. Right now it seems like it was bad timing, but better now than down the road with a messy divorce. A friend of mine married a circus performer in New Orleans. It was a fairly large and interesting wedding with lots of really crazy people. Somehow one of the bride's ex-boyfriends crashed the ceremony. During that fateful moment, the officiant asks, "Does anyone object to this union?" The ex, very drunk at this point, fires a wobbly hand into the air, screams yes, me, and starts shuffling towards the stage. Without skipping a beat, the groom takes 2 steps forward and punches the interloper in the mouth, knocking him out. They resumed the ceremony after raucous applause and laughter. I went to a wedding reception party that they had after the groom slept with someone at the bachelor's party, and they didn't want the money to go to wait, so they threw a kick-butt party. It was really tense at the head table though. Not sure if this fits in with the objected theme, but here I go. I got married on Halloween in the French Quarter of New Orleans, right in front of the gates of Jackson Square. It was on a Sunday at nightfall, which was hilarious to me. The Black Sabbath. Right there is a really dense, popular area for people to cruise around in. We had a really cool reverend. He actually got his own reality show a few months later, Bourbon Street Brides. It was all real nice, and we were finishing the ceremony and everything went off without a hitch. A ton of people, around 70 or more, had actually stopped and watched. Some even videotaped and took pics of it, and sat on the stairs of the St. Louis Cathedral, directly across from the gates we were at, about 10 feet away, to watch us. It was awesome. The Reverend had this blind violin player play a song for us to do our first dance as a married couple. Unbeknownst to me, I was focused on my husband. A large group of Christian nutjobs with the big scary signs, "God hates you," "You're going to heck," etc. They were big signs. Had gathered and at that moment started yelling at us about how we were sinners and yada yada, which makes zero sense because we were legitimately getting married. And no, we weren't in costumes. We were in traditional garb. My dress was black. But whatever. My kid sister, who weighs about 100 pounds, went into a rage and ran at the protesters and started screaming, "You Emma, trying to ruin my sister's wedding." This started to stir up the crowd and they all started to jump up and scream at these dudes, and then, boom. A huge fight broke out. A bunch of guys I never met fought crazy Christian protesters for my honor. It was freaking awesome. The violinist never stopped playing. We didn't stop dancing and there was a massive brawl happening all around. It was incredible. Then my reverend stepped up like he was Goddamn Gandalf and said, I am Reverend Anthony Tolliver and you will leave this place. And just like that they did. Kind of an anticlimactic ending, but that's how it goes. I used to work for a high-class catering company. The first wedding of the season a couple years back cost around $8 for the catering alone. Everyone brought their A game with style and swank, and the couple looked like they were out of a storybook. The best man took off his pants during his speech. The maid of honor spent half the wedding puking her stomach out, and one of the bridesmaids got into a goddamn fist fight with the mother of the bride in the parking lot. As we bust the tables, every water glass was full and every beer glass empty. We were smoking with some of the guests after cleanup and one of the groomsmen said it was the best wedding he'd ever been to. Agreed. My cousin had her wedding in her new house. Her twin sister wasn't there when the ceremony was supposed to start, but they had the ceremony anyway. When they got to the pause for objections, the doorbell rang, and it was her twin sister. It was a tense moment when somebody opened the door and the sister was there visibly angry. She didn't actually have an objection, she just went to the old house first and ended up being late. At my friend's wedding last year, the priest gets to the point where he says, "Speak now or forever hold your peace." In the subsequent silence, my mate's 2-year-old kid pipes up with a classic high-pitched, "Daddy," and definitely not the case. We all cracked up, and the wedding continued with everyone grinning. Probably doesn't count, but my cousin wrote help in white paint on the bottoms of his brother's shoes, so when he and the bride knelt at the altar, Catholic wedding mass, the message was flashed to the crowd. At my friend's wedding a couple of years back, the best man wrote in Tipex on the groom's shoes "Game over." It got flashed up as he knelt at the altar too. Everyone in the church was silently in hysterics. The bride was P at the signings. Totally worth it. I was playing guitar in a band which was hired to perform at a wedding reception. The lead singer was friends with the bride, who was quite a stunner. In the dressing room between spots, I asked the singer if he'd ever shagged the bride, to which he gestured as if holding her head against his gyrating hips, receiving oral pleasure. At which point it was realized, the father of the bride was standing in the open doorway smoking a cigarette, looking distinctly unimpressed. The worst part was the silence, as everyone just filtered off, pretending to be busy with something else. Embarrassing but funny. This is late and will no doubt get buried, but it's a good story, so frick it. My dad went to a wedding in the early 90s. The ceremony went fine and they were on to the speeches. The groom's turn came. He stood up, raised his glass, said, "I'd like to thank the best man and my lovely wife, as they've been fricking each other for the past 6 months, downed his drink and walked out the back. Shocked silence. Apparently the father of the bride then went round in a desperate and futile attempt to get his money back, trying to put the corks back in all the wine bottles, telling everyone party's over, everyone leave. Most awkward wedding ever. When I was about 16, my cousin on the redneck, pig farming side of my family got married. My cousin, the groom, purposely did not invite his older brother, who was a drunkard and butthole nearly 24/7. Midway through the ceremony, in a nice country church, he comes stumbling in, drunk off his butt with a shotgun, yelling, "Why wouldn't you invite your own brother to your wedding? How he fricked the bride first and she will always long for his dong. How she liked to get fricked by the pigs," etc. He starts shooting the shotgun in the air and takes out a window of the church. Luckily it was a double barrel and about 10 guys tackled him when he went to reload. They held him down until the cops arrived. The cops dragged him kicking and screaming to the car and he ended up getting 15 years in prison for various charges. They continued the wedding though, after about an hour of calm down time. Surprisingly, they are still married after 25 years. Historical background. As far as I can remember, the historical basis for this part of the ceremony comes from the days before anyone had any type of photo ID or marriage databases, and you couldn't really prove who was who or if they were already married or not. If you wanted to get married, you could do it 2 ways, by license, or by banns. If you got married by license, there was no waiting period, but you usually had to provide written proof from the parish you were born in, and from witnesses who attested to your identity, and pay a fee. If you got married by banns, The marriage intentions were announced at Sunday services for 3 weeks prior to the wedding in the home parish of the bride and the home parish of the groom. Anyone who knew if one or the other had been previously married could then inform the priest and the ceremony would be cancelled. At the wedding ceremony, a final call was made to ask if anyone knew if there was any reason that the two should not be wed. This was a legal requirement and offered people a chance to out a liar, cheater, or imposter. Today it's just a holdover formality, but back in the day, it was serious business. You can see the remnants of the real fear people had about this in some of the older English novels where the women find out that the man has a wife in another city, and therefore her marriage is nullified and she is ashamed for sleeping with a married man in an illegitimate marriage. Shady stuff back in the day. Anyway, I'm sure someone will come along and correct me, but as far as I remember, that's what it's for. Interestingly, bands still feature here. UK. My wife and I had our bands read in church for 3 consecutive Sundays before we could get married. At risk of being a hypocrite, it made the whole thing seem quite special. Even though I'm an atheist, my wife isn't. My older cousin had been married and divorced, then dated a new guy, and they were going to get married. At the wedding she got cold feet and didn't come out when the music started to play. Everyone was waiting there for like an hour until she finally came out. I was like 5 and only remember thinking, why isn't she coming out? Doesn't she hear the music? That's cute, but the pianist was P. I was at a wedding one time where just as the bride and groom were about to kiss, some crazy guy starts banging on the window on the balcony of the church. He was yelling out Cassandra, which was weird because that wasn't the name of the bride. He must have realized this when everyone turned to look. He looked embarrassed, apologized and ran. To this day no one has any idea of who that guy was. Mrs. Balvier. One of my good friends was marrying my cousin and I was the best man in the wedding. He had never really got along with my cousin's dad, uncle, so things were always weird with them. So as my uncle walked her down the aisle to give her away, the pastor asked, "Who gives this woman to be wed?" He responds, "Her mother does, but I do not." Then he looked at my buddy and went on a 3-minute rant about how he better treat her good or there will be repercussions. The whole wedding party was like WTF and the pastor thought it was some sort of joke. So then after all that happened, in front of 350 plus people I might add, we go through the rest of the ceremony in a bit of shock. Then as everyone has about left for the reception, they, uncle and groom, happen to pass each other in the church's main lobby. He puts a shoulder into my uncle and says something to the lines of "You're a freaking butthole," and that's when they started swinging. Me and one of the other groomsmen break it up, as they are both freaking the frick out, in the middle of the Baptist church. My cousin and her mom are crying profusely and the limo ride afterwards was awful. The reception was the most awkward, weird, and ignorant thing I have ever been to. It was back and forth between them and then both dads got into a shouting match. Literally a train wreck. Needless to say, they got divorced about 2 years ago. We still talk about it to this day though. One of the craziest things I have experienced. I know I'm late, but I usually share this story. This year my pastor's son got married after delaying the wedding by almost a year. The reason was because his GF's family objected to him. He's an incredibly sweet guy, but her family didn't want her marrying him. They tried for months and months to try and smooth things out, but eventually the wedding happened. His entire family came. Her parents, sisters, etc. were no-shows. Only an aunt and some of her cousins came. She walked down the aisle by herself. Her dad didn't even come to give her away. They're doing great, but the family still seems to be cold to the marriage. I can't imagine why she still speaks to her family. Nothing happened during the ceremony, but when my dad got remarried, my grandmother had a few champagnes and started to wonder if my dad actually really knew his new wife. They got married really quick, and if this was a mistake. Turns out she was talking to my new stepmom's mom. Stepmom's mom tells stepmom. Stepmom confronts grandmother. It gets a little heated until my grandfather tells a joke and defuses the situation just enough for everyone to back off. Also turns out my grandmother was right. It's probably because it's 1 in the morning, but you lost me somewhere there. I'll try again when I wake up. Went to the wedding of a friend. It was in Vegas at a wedding chapel. Another friend of mine stood up during the objection part, in a full Jedi garb, raised his purple lightsaber, yes, he's black, to the air and said I do. The bride told him to sit down, and after a moment, he did. The pastor looked at everyone and said, "This'll be a fun one." Yes, actually, I was best man in my friend's wedding and the groom's mother, who has a bad case of paranoid schizo, stood up and said, "They're just going to get divorced." She gets up and walks out and down the aisle and out the church doors. The groom looks at everyone and says, "Don't mind her, that's just my mom," and everything went on like nothing happened. No, but I wish. Friend getting married young because of pregnancy to psycho boyfriend with a temper. Can't see it going well for anyone. My ex-wife and I had a significantly more funny and fun than solemn wedding. We specifically included a pause and instructed everyone in the party to look at my father at the speak now bit, which we only included for him. He was exactly the person who would have stood up at that point, looked around, stretched and sat back down. It was his cue. Sadly, he didn't. I never asked why. That sounds brilliant. My mother-in-law objected. She was worried I was leading her son down the path of darkness. She is Mormon and I am not. My husband basically told her to frick off. She and her family left in tears and we continued the wedding. 12 years later, we are pretty dang happy in love still. I went to one where the father objected beforehand and did not attend. The mother was her daughter's maid of honor and was just in tears the entire time. Real tears, like Native American tears. Side note, it was a rural garden wedding and there was a goat sounding off 20 feet away from the reception. Wasn't a big issue until the microphone stopped working. The goat was heard over the entire hours. I was a groomsman at a wedding recently, and when we got to that part the officiant said if anyone has any objections, you've had 6 months while the wedding was being planned to voice them and now it's too late. Pretty funny. It got a good laugh. It was a beautiful ceremony at a beach house looking out over the ocean. We're all out on the deck and the preacher is going through his spiel and gets to the objection part. The bride's brother jumps up to his feet and yells "I object," and her dad, sitting down at this point, also leaps to his feet, pulls out a flintlock pistol and shoots him. God dang. That pirate themed wedding was the best thing I've been to. I feel like I've seen this before very recently. Anyway, if this hasn't been said already, I understand in England in a church wedding saying "I object" is very dangerous. Co-flaw still applies, which means the wedding cannot go ahead until there has been a formal investigation of the grounds of the objection. Furthermore, the bride is to be made a ward of the church until the investigation has been concluded. If the objection is upheld, the bride remains a ward of the church until encouraged to remarry or join a convent. If the objection is overruled, the person who objected is liable for all the costs of the delay. Source: I read this somewhere. Can't remember where. Probably the last time this was on Reddit. The TLDR. Do not object in an English wedding. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.